A vast map reveals the dark forest, a mystical boundary forged by ancient wars between dragons and gods. This natural barrier, steeped in legend, continues to separate the descendants of those who once fought for dominance. The land remains a graveyard for those who dared enter, a grim reminder of the war's relentless horrors. Peace was finally restored by a legendary warrior, a brave descendant of dragons who emerged from the chaos. Cheers erupt across the kingdom as Princess Alfaria, the celebrated blonde warrior, finally returns to her waiting people. A grand festival fills the streets with life, while a majestic white creature soars through the clear blue sky. Citizens marvel at the princess's prowess, their voices rising in collective admiration for her incredible feat of survival. Shadows of past doubt linger, recalling the many voices that predicted her certain demise within the dangerous forest. Rumors once accused the blonde princess of cowardice, claiming she fled the empire under the guise of a mission. Those who once mocked her are now silenced, as the brown-haired man gleefully notes her triumphant, undeniable success. A sudden thud sounds as the princess arrives, her return signaling a new era for the expectant kingdom. A figure in ornate dark robes watches the celebration, the intricate patterns reflecting a status of high nobility. The black-haired man offers his warm congratulations, his calm gaze meeting the princess as she makes her return. Resolute and graceful, the princess looks toward the horizon, surrounded by floating petals and the remnants of her journey. Sharp insults echo in her memory as Syria, the blonde girl, glares toward the source of the cruel whispers. Villagers gossip about Syria, whose name literally translates to being covered in ash, a title befitting her station. Syria sighs deeply, reflecting on her difficult life as a lowly serf within the judgmental eyes of the village. Cruel whispers follow her, with others predicting a grim future where her only value lies in her appearance. An oppressive darkness underscores the weight of the Baron's command, a shadow that has haunted her for years. While other families struggled on gruel, her family was allowed to hunt, fostering a quiet resentment among neighbors. The sight of meager gruel highlights the disparity that caused her family to be scorned by the hungry villagers. At 10 years old, Syria finds her only true solace wandering deep within the quiet sanctuary of the forest. A quick knock-knock sounds against the wooden door as she calls out for the familiar presence of neighbors. A rhythmic clack sounds as the door swings open, revealing Yevan's surprised face as he greets the young girl. Yevan reacts with comical outrage, scolding Syria for her lack of formality when referring to his wife, Galen. Syria teases him with a bright laugh, causing Yevan's shoulders to droop in mock defeat as he gives up. She proudly presents her basket, explaining her intent to gather berries and blackcurrants from the nearby woods today. Yevan pauses to ponder her plans, his expression shifting to one of genuine concern for the young girl's safety. He warns her about hidden dangers, specifically advising her to keep a sharp eye out for snakes in bushes. Syria pauses to ask a question, her curious gaze fixed on the older man as they stand outside his home. Shock colors her face as she processes the idea of learning the skill of archery from her experienced friend. Yevan explains his worry about wild boars and reveals he has the perfect wood to craft her a bow. He offers to craft a custom weapon just for her, encouraging the young girl to consider learning to hunt. Syria considers the possibility, remembering her father's use of traps and wondering if she can truly master a bow. Yevan advises her not to rush her decision, reminding her to consult her parents before starting such a task. She looks out into the sun-drenched forest, the dream of owning her own bow beginning to take firm root. The thought of a free, high-quality bow fills her with excitement, making the difficult training seem well worth it. She beams with joy, thrilled by the rare opportunity to possess something truly valuable and rare in her life. A loud hooray escapes her as she cheers, eager to finish her work and share the news with her parents. A soft pick sound accompanies a satisfying nom sounds as she samples a sweet berry, wishing she could afford such treats every single day. She looks down at her empty basket, realized she has spent too much time daydreaming instead of working hard. With a quick thwip sound, she redoubles her efforts, frantically filling the basket so she can finally head home. A sudden rustle startles her, her heightened senses making her wonder if her excitement is playing tricks on her. A rhythmic shake in the dense foliage catches her eye, causing her to freeze as she searches for the source. A chilling whoosh of wind passes as she realizes something substantial is lurking just out of sight. in the bushes. Chills run down her spine as Yevan's warnings about wild boars and snakes suddenly feel much more immediate and terrifying. She trembles in the shadows, her breath hitching as she confirms the presence of an unknown creature nearby. Moving with extreme caution, Syria tries to retreat slowly, desperate to avoid catching the attention of whatever is watching. A gray creature leaps through the forest. A sharp swish sounds as Syria, the blonde girl, looks up in shock. Syria sits on the grass, wincing in pain. A growl sounds as she wonders what just struck her from the bushes. Squinting against the light, the blonde girl tries to focus her gaze on the small, mysterious figure standing nearby. Her bright blue eyes widen in surprise as she comes face to face with a small creature making a soft gew sound. Meeting a strange beast in the woods, Syria watches as the small, gray creature makes a playful ha sound. The blonde girl peers down at the mysterious beast, her curiosity piqued as she wonders what kind of creature it is. A soft gew sound escapes the small beast as it looks up at Syria with massive, watery blue eyes. Stunned, Syria wonders if the tiny, winged creature before her could actually be a legendary dragon. Sitting in the sun-drenched forest, the blonde girl contemplates the unexpected encounter with the small, gray dragon. Looking skeptical, Syria notes the creature's appearance, finding it far less impressive than the majestic dragons from legends. A sleepy yawn sounds as the gray beast stretches, its small wings fluttering as it ignores Syria's disappointed appraisal. A rhythmic shake and scratch sound as the small beast rolls around, its dull, ash-colored fur appearing unimpressive to Syria. Despite her initial doubt, the blonde girl finds herself captivated by the small creature's strikingly clear and blue eyes. Narrative text highlights the contrast between the beast's unremarkable appearance and its jewel-like eyes shining under the sky. The small gray dragon sits amidst blue flowers, its big eyes reflecting a sense of innocent wonder. Lifting the small beast, Syria realizes that while stories say dragons are scary, this one is surprisingly adorable. Syria smiles warmly, noting how the creature's ash-colored feathers perfectly match the literal meaning of her own name. A soft gew and grumble sound as the blonde girl holds the hungry beast, wondering what it needs. Feeling dazed, Syria wonders if the creature is hungry, noting the small stars floating around her in her confusion. As she walks through the woods with the dragon, Syria worries because she has no idea what dragons eat. Recalling the berry bushes, the blonde girl offers the small beast a ripe red berry to see if it's interested. The small dragon leans in, curious as Syria encourages it to smell the berry she is offering. A quick ptoo sounds as the creature spits the berry out, leaving Syria disappointed by its lack of appetite. Syria sighs as the creature makes a sad gew sound, leaning its head against her in a moment of bonding. A narrative box notes Syria's struggle as a lowly serf who lacks the resources to provide meat for her new friend. After Syria asks what it eats, a sudden bite sounds, followed by a gulp and a startled ah as the dragon nibbles her finger. A quick lick sounds as Syria reacts with shock, scolding the small dragon for trying to drink her blood. Looking at her hand, the blonde girl is bewildered to find no wound where the small dragon just bit her. Held aloft, the gray dragon stares directly at Syria with its big, starry blue eyes, appearing perfectly content. The scene shifts back to the village house, where the warm sunlight hits the roof of a brick building. A rhythmic splish and splash sound as Syria washes her hands, the water rippling in the sunlight. Syria stands in deep thought, her mind returning to the life-changing encounter she just experienced in the forest. An inner thought explosion emphasizes her disbelief as she questions if her encounter with the dragon was just a dream. A sudden flash sounds as Syria's bright blue eyes snap open, pulling her back into the present moment. A loud schwa sounds as a tell warns her daughter about the overflowing water, snapping Syria out of her daydream. Kurait tells Syria to clean up the mess and come help in the kitchen, noticing her distracted state amidst rhythmic thumps. Syria remains silent, her mind still lingering on the small creature she left behind in the quiet of the forest. Syria recalls naming the beast Cisellia, meaning big blue eyes like dewdrops, while holding it gently in the woods. A rhythmic shake-shake sounds as the small beast vigorously denies being food when Syria asks it a curious question. The creature gives another quick shake, rejecting the idea that it thinks the blonde girl is its long-lost mother. Cisellia stares up with shimmering blue eyes as Syria wonders if they can simply be friends instead. A happy gew sounds as the small dragon beams with a wide, toothy grin, clearly pleased by the girl's suggestion. Returning the creature's smile, Syria agrees that they are friends, her blue eyes sparkling with a new sense of joy. Holding the dragon high, the blonde girl officially introduces herself as Syria, surrounded by a frame of blooming red roses. Atel and Karit discuss the valuable bow Yevan offered to make, finding the bowmaker's ideas quite bizarre. Her father warns that his lordship wouldn't like a muscular body, prompting a quick defensive response from a laughing Syria. Den looks on with envy, wishing he could learn archery, while Syria playfully tells him to get back to work. Syria's father suggests she take only a few lessons and then quit, questioning the necessity of a serf learning archery. Determined, Syria resolves to learn, using the archery lessons as a perfect excuse to go back and see Cisellia. While eating, the blonde girl remains deep in thought, her curiosity about her new dragon friend continuing to grow. Syria's father explains that dragon knights avoid small villages, adding that encounters with them are best avoided entirely. A vision of a knight riding a massive dragon breathing lightning illustrates his warning about the horrors of war. The father's narration continues over a battlefield, explaining that seeing dragon knights signifies the arrival of a great conflict. Syria asks about wild dragons, but her father notes that such knowledge is reserved only for high-ranking nobles. Looking thoughtful, the blonde girl wonders why her new friend Cisellia was wandering all alone in the deep forest. Her father reacts with skepticism when Syria asks if ash-colored dragons drink blood, dismissing the idea as a ridiculous story. Syria flinches as her father asks if she's been up to anything suspicious while she's out in the woods. She quickly silences Den before he can speak, while her father warns her to be careful about their social standing. As the village settles into darkness, the family prepares to clean up and head to bed for the night. A soft sigh sounds under the starlit sky as the quiet of the night settles over the small village. Tossing and turning on her bed of straw, Syria finds it impossible to sleep after such an eventful day. She contemplates the chance to learn archery, her hand reaching out as she reflects on the day's surprising opportunities. Lying beside the sleeping Den, Syria wonders if her meeting was destiny, yet remains grounded by her life as a serf. Looking up with wide blue eyes, the blonde girl remains deep in thought, while her brother sleeps soundly beside her. She reflects on how her small world has always been confined to the village and the woods until now. Syria realizes that meeting the dragon today has begun to expand her horizons beyond the life she once knew. A shimmering vision of a grand city suggests the wider world that Syria is beginning to dream of exploring. The scene shifts to Yevan's house the next morning as he prepares to present his latest wooden creation. Yevan presents the new bow with a triumphant ta-da, leaving the blonde girl looking impressed by his craftsmanship. Syria asks about the wood type, but Yevan explains that expensive yew trees are far too rare for beginners. He explains the bow is made of ashwood, teasing Syria when she reacts with a slight playful huff. Yevan notes that she is still growing and will eventually need a more professional weapon as she gets taller. A strained groan sounds as Syria struggles with the physical effort required to properly string her new wooden bow. A close-up of her determined blue eye highlights her inner doubt about what her future truly holds for her. A dark premonition shows an older Syria sitting alone in a cobwebbed room, suggesting a future of domestic servitude. Narrative text reveals her fear of becoming nothing more than a servant in charge of a high-ranking lord's bedroom. Returning to the present, Yevan finishes stringing the bow and assesses the tension as the morning sun shines through. He encourages the blonde girl, assuring her that she has potential and simply needs more practice to improve. Yevan gives a confident nod, ready to begin her very first lesson in the art of using a bow. He provides technical advice on using the leather grip, warning that an improper release could lead to a painful injury. The lesson continues amidst the trees, with Yevan advising her on how to properly extend her stance for stability. An ooh sounds as Syria shakes and trembles, her face contorting with effort as she tries to hold the string. The red-haired Galen arrives on the scene, her sudden appearance catching the attention of the bowmaker and his student. Galen smiles warmly, greeting her husband and Syria as they dive headfirst into the girl's very first shooting practice. Galen scolds Yevan for discouraging the girl, while a nervous laughter sounds from Syria as she watches the couple bicker. A series of bounce and ping sounds follow as Sirius's first arrow fails miserably, skipping uselessly across the grass. Syria stands dazed and embarrassed by her poor performance, her eyes wide as she processes her lack of natural skill. Galen lets out a playful pft as she laughs, explaining that arrows travel in a dome and require a specific feel. A close-up shows a hand holding an arrow, preparing for another attempt at hitting the target in the woods. Yevan kneels to demonstrate the proper lift needed to guide the arrow, while Syria watches his movements with intense focus. He reminds her that there are no shortcuts to mastery, and that constant practice is the only way to improve. A soft giggle from Galen makes Syria blush with embarrassment as she realizes how much she still has to learn. A loud shout for honey echoes through the trees, while Syria notes how well the older couple always gets along. A sudden flutter startles the blonde girl as a small bird takes flight from the nearby branches, catching her eye. Syria considers using birds as target practice, but quickly remembers her father's warnings about the dangers of illegal hunting. She recalls the stern warnings from her father and Yevan about the severe punishments for hunting without a lord's permission. Looking out at the sunlit leaves, Syria reminds herself that she didn't come into the woods to practice archery today. Her hand reaches into the thick green foliage, searching for something far more important than a target for her bow. A sudden, quick dash sounds as something moves rapidly through the undergrowth toward the waiting blonde girl. A joyful leap sounds as the small gray dragon springs into Syria's arms, reunited with its smiling friend at last. Syria happily hugs her dragon friend, praising him for being a good Sizz. A rhythmic suck-suck sounds as the dragon nibbles Syria's finger, continuing its habit of drinking her blood. In the sunny woods, Syria watches Sizz and asks if he is finally full after his meal. A soft ha sounds as Syria lets out a weary sigh while resting on the forest floor. Sitting together, Syria admits her confusion about Sizz species, noting that even the experienced Yevan is stumped. The blonde girl ponders the mystery of Sizz' ash-colored feathers and striking blue eyes, details unheard of by others. A shimmering vision of a majestic, iridescent dragon suggests the legendary creatures Syria is comparing her friend to. Syria shares her imaginative theories with Sizz, finding the possibility of his true nature fascinating. A quiet peep sounds as Syria focuses intensely on the small creature's reacting face. Sizz closes his eyes in bliss, surrounded by a magical sparkle and twinkle as he enjoys Syria's attention. A happy gew sounds as Sizz confirms he is indeed special, leaving Syria more curious than ever. A shadow falls over Syria's face as she whispers Sizz's name, her mind filled with swirling doubts. A dull throb and ache sound as Syria rubs her sore shoulder, feeling the strain of her archery practice. Looking exhausted, Syria regrets not listening to Galen's advice about overworking her muscles during her training sessions. Syria recalls her parents' push for her to serve his lordship, though she secretly desires a different path. She reflects on the blessing of being noticed by his lordship, wondering about her forced future as an inheritor. Syria realizes that no one values her personal desires as she stands before the grand, imposing village architecture. A loud thwack sounds as Syria's arrow hits the mark, earning a cheer of "excellent" from her teacher. Yevan notes Syria's significant improvement, though she remains focused on the physical toll of her secret goal. As Syria practices with her bow, she playfully wonders why she hasn't gained any visible muscle yet. Yevan looks on with suspicion, noting that the blonde girl has been disappearing into the woods too frequently. The bowmaker sternly reminds Syria that hunting without the Lord's permission is a dangerous crime for a serf. Syria offers a nervous, bright smile and quickly agrees that she understands the grave risks of illegal hunting. She explains that the quiet of the forest is simply the best place to focus on her archery lessons. Yevan acknowledges her intelligence, but urges her to remain extremely careful while wandering the deep woods alone. A year passes, and Syria looks back as news of an unidentified forest creature begins to stir the village. A peaceful chirp and tweet sound from the high branches as Syria returns to her secret meeting spot. Smiling brightly, Syria announces her arrival to her friend, her eyes filled with joy at their reunion. Syria embraces a now massive Cisellia, the dragon having grown to an impressive size over the past year. She gently asks what he's been up to, her bond with the giant beast stronger than ever. Syria reflects on how she has become accustomed to the dragon's strange habit of drinking her blood for nourishment. The horse-sized Cisellia licks her hand, the narration noting his remarkably fast growth and increased activity. As Sizz hunts more frequently, villagers like Yevan begin to notice unsettling signs of a large predator nearby. Syria feels a wave of anxiety, fearing that her massive friend will soon be discovered by the village. A warm hug sounds as Syria holds onto Cisellia, noting that despite his size, he still acts like a baby. A soft drop sounds as a large tear falls, catching Syria completely off guard during their quiet moment. Shocked, Syria looks up into her friend's eyes and desperately asks what could be making him cry. Cisellia looks down with a deeply sorrowful expression, his massive blue eyes brimming with sadness. A sudden falter sounds in Syria's heart as she realizes something is terribly wrong with her dragon friend. She frantically asks if she has done something wrong or if he is feeling unwell, searching for answers. Syria's voice trails off as a painful realization begins to dawn on her while she stares at Cisellia. With a heavy heart, the blonde girl asks Cisellia if he is planning to leave her and the forest. A sad nod sounds as the dragon confirms her fears, leaving Syria questioning why they must part ways. Syria dreads the loneliness that will follow if her only true friend disappears from her small world forever. The forest remains silent, serving as the only home Cisellia has known since their chance meeting. Syria realizes that Cisellia has outgrown the woods, unable to even stretch his wings in the cramped foliage. She understands that his presence is a danger to the village and that he needs a vast wilderness to survive. A vision of the distant, sprawling mountains highlights the wild expanses that Cisellia truly belongs to. The dark forest looms in the distance, beckoning the dragon back to a land where he can fly free. Facing the inevitable, Syria accepts that she has known for a long time that their paths would eventually diverge. Her knuckles turn white as a sudden, tight clench sounds, her hand gripping her garment in silent frustration. Whispered rumors fill the air as village silhouettes gossip, expressing their growing fear and resentment toward the blonde girl. A sudden, comforting rub sounds as the massive gray dragon nudges Syria, startling her out of her dark thoughts. Syria tearfully embraces her large friend, desperately asking if his presence can truly mend her broken and fearful heart. She turns to leave the forest sanctuary, the falling leaves mirroring the heavy sadness weighing down her every step. Walking through the sun-dappled woods, Syria finally accepts the painful reality that it is time to let her friend go. Tears stream down her face as she whispers a final, heartbreaking goodbye to her beloved companion, Sizz. The majestic, horse-sized dragon gazes toward the open sky, finally ready to reclaim the wild freedom he was born for. Looking up at the light filtering through the leaves, Syria reflects on the life-changing friendship they shared. Syria believes that their bond will endure as long as they both hold on to the memory of their time together. She clings to the hope of a future reunion, even as the world around her becomes increasingly dangerous and uncertain. A sudden, quick dash sounds as a boot kicks up dirt, signaling an urgent and rapid departure from the woods. Syria sprints through the dense foliage, her expression filled with a frantic and desperate need to flee her overwhelming grief. A series of huff and pant sounds follow as Syria gasps for air, whispering one last goodbye while running away. Overcome by exhaustion and sorrow, she falls to the forest floor with a heavy thud, left alone in the silence. Her face flushed and eyes brimming with tears, Syria cries out a final, agonizing farewell to her friend, Cisellia. Distant voices call for aid, while a title card marks the beginning of a new chapter in Syria's challenging life. The grand crest of the Elian Empire appears, signaling a shift toward the broader political conflicts of the continent. Narrative text explains the empire's history of using dragons to dominate its neighbors, and its long-standing rivalry with Heron. The contrasting bloodlines of the two empires highlight the deep-seated animosity and cultural differences that fuel their constant warring. Failed invasion attempts and military struggles illustrate the slow, steady decline of the once formidable Heron Empire. While its enemies faltered, the Elian Empire entered a magnificent golden age of prosperity, luxury, and celebration. Music and laughter fill the imperial ballrooms as the nobility enjoys the stability and wealth of their thriving nation. The sudden death of the Heron Emperor without an heir plunges his nation into a violent and chaotic civil war. A sudden oink sounds as villagers discuss their proximity to the border and their long history of avoiding direct conflict. A rhythmic snort and oink sound as a green-eyed boy shares terrifying rumors of fallen knights and potential enemy invasions. The boy turns to a now matured Syria, fearfully asking what they should do if the war reaches their peaceful village. Facing the looming threat of war, Syria admits her own uncertainty about the future and her role in it. Looking out at her village at night, the older Syria holds her bow, hoping for peace but fearing the inevitable. She clings to a desperate hope that they can avoid the bloodshed, even as the signs of war approach. a fluffy white rabbit appears in the woods, marking the quiet passage of time since Cisellia's departure. A quick scurry sounds as Syria, now 15 years old, continues to frequent the forest meeting spot they once shared. Now quite tall and physically matured, Syria reflects on her growth and the many changes that have occurred over 5 years. Her village friends call out to her, and Syria quickly agrees to join them as they walk through the trees. Syria pauses to look back over her shoulder, a lingering sense of nostalgia for her lost friend still pulling at her. As Syria grew older, the village's resentment shifted away from her and toward the controlling and greedy Baron Harper. Narrative text reveals that Syria's maturing beauty only served to increase the villagers' disdain for the Baron's future plans. A strained groan sounds as Syria struggles with a hefty sack, noting how the villagers have slowly begun to accept her. Scandalized whispers highlight the cruelty of the Baron's plan to take a mistress even younger than his own son. Syria looks on in shock as 2 villagers suddenly offer to help her, insisting she shouldn't carry such heavy loads. The man takes the burden from her, demonstrating the protective kindness the villagers have finally started to show her. Despite the local support, Syria feels a deepening dread as the day of her forced service to the lordship approaches. A visual timeline illustrates Syria's steady growth from a small child into a tall, capable young woman. A series of raw sounds shatter the night as screams for mercy echo through the village tower. Clutching her bow, Syria looks on with wide, terrified eyes as her fears of a violent future finally become reality. In a grand war room, a silver-haired man listens as an armored knight begins a strategic briefing over a map. The knight coolly proposes a ruthless scorched earth strategy, suggesting they burn the outskirts to protect the main territory. Commander Astol of the Knights of Harper stands tall, his stern expression reflecting his unwavering loyalty to the Baron's orders. The briefing concludes with a grim warning that Heron soldiers are likely to launch an invasion from the nearby mountains. The elderly Baron Harper sits atop his throne, deciding to wait and observe before acting on the request for reinforcements. Commander Astol, the brown-haired knight in silver armor, begins to report the critical intelligence gathered by his men. High above the castle spires, the threat of Heron's growing military vigor necessitates a more aggressive defensive preparation. A strained groan sounds as the white-haired Baron dismisses the urgency, questioning why they should rush before an actual invasion. Facing away from his subordinates, the Baron coldly decides to burn the farmlands only once the enemy is within sight. The strategists look over a mountainous map, questioning how their limited military power should be distributed across the territory. Baron Harper discusses the dire numbers with his purple-haired son, Lancel, noting they have only 50 soldiers and 6 knights. Lancel Harper questions if they could utilize the blonde serf girl known for her remarkable proficiency with a bow. A memory surfaces of Syria performing archery tricks at the Rodin banquet, her talent catching the eye of the nobility. The Baron hushes the conversation, warning his son to be extremely cautious about what he says regarding the girl. A flashback reveals a tearful young Syria hidden away, kept secret from the world under the Baron's strict personal orders. Narrative text highlights that the girl's distinctive blonde hair and blue eyes perfectly match the noble Imperial family's traits. The Baron smiles wickedly, gloating that taking the child as his a sharp warning fills the air, threatening execution for anyone who fails to watch their mouth about the girl's existence. A sudden jolt sounds as the Baron is startled, his expression shifting from arrogance to surprise during the strategy meeting. A metallic clunk sounds as Astol bows, but the Baron remains stubborn, insisting there is no reason to rush reinforcements. Astol is visibly shocked when the Baron suddenly announces that he intends to lead the troops to Rodin himself. The commander is left speechless as the Baron orders him to stay behind and help Lancel secure the castle instead. Commander Astol argues that they shouldn't distribute their small force, but the Baron is determined to join forces with Rodin. Strategic silhouettes illustrate the grim reality that only 30 soldiers will remain to defend the entire Harper territory. Standing behind his desk, the Baron mocks the brown-haired commander, calling him far too timid for a knight. Astol clarifies that his concerns are rooted in loyalty, not fear, as he only wishes to protect his lord's lands. The Baron barks at Astol to stop whining and obey, preparing to leave the castle with 2 other knights. Distressed by the reckless plan, Astol listens as the Baron confirms he is taking 20 of their few soldiers away. A final booming command echoes through the hall, demanding that everything be prepared exactly as the Baron instructed. A tight clench sounds as Astol's gloved hand tightens in silent fury before he submits to his ruler's reckless commands. A sudden, loud slam sounds as a desk is struck, causing a nearby official to tisk in frustration and shock. Looking away in deep thought, Astel brusquely tells his companion to prepare for the inevitable arrival of the enemy. Close up on Astel's face, he realizes he has no choice but to follow the Lordship's adamant and dangerous orders. A rhythmic clomp sounds as armored knights stand guard under the night sky, their silhouettes illuminated by falling embers. A frantic call for the commander sounds as spears are raised, signaling the start of a sudden and violent assault. Multiple clomp sounds echo as a soldier shouts in terror, confirming that the enemy has finally breached their borders. A massive clomp sounds as heavy footsteps move through the darkness, accompanied by the sight of floating golden petals. Focusing on the armored boots of the advancing army, a soldier estimates the enemy force at nearly 1,000 men. Lancel Harper admits he should have heeded Astel's advice, shocked that the enemy attacked the moment his father left. Lancel demands a full briefing on their remaining forces as villagers begin seeking refuge within the castle's stone walls. Commander Astel looks out with a grim expression, knowing they must immediately prepare for a battle they are outnumbered in. Facing the looming threat, the knights consider the desperate measure of drafting the serfs to bolster their thinning ranks. Lancel points toward the ranks, barking orders at a nervous soldier to ensure everyone is ready for the coming clash. A faint grumble and gripe sound as Lancel walks away, leaving Astel to ponder their survival in the quiet twilight. A sudden, rhythmic drop sounds as Lord Lancel calls out to Syria, who is carrying a heavy basket of supplies. Lancel explains he summoned the blonde girl because her proficiency with a bow is now vital for the castle's defense. In a close-up of his gloved hand, Lancel promises Syria that she will be made a free man if she fights. Syria is stunned by the offer, her heart racing at the thought of gaining the same status as Mr. Yevan. She mentions her upcoming birthday, fearing the Baron's plan to force her into becoming his mistress later this year. Lancel sighs wearily, callously wondering aloud how much longer his aging father will even remain alive to enforce such plans. Placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, Lancel promises to take full responsibility for her future if she joins the fight. With a look of steely determination, Syria agrees to the deal, choosing the battlefield over the Baron's predatory plans. Looking up with renewed hope, Syria wonders if this path will truly liberate her from being his lordship's mistress. Flashback shows a boy named Den complaining about heavy stones, contrasting the difficult labor of building the castle's moat. Narrative text captures the heavy anxiety of watching the fields, waiting for the inevitable arrival of the enemy. In a tight close-up, Syria's wide blue eye reflects her inner turmoil as she anticipates the coming conflict. Syria looks down from the castle wall at Mr. Yevan, who delivers the news from the Knight Commander. Against the glowing sunset, Mr. Yevan shares his uncertainty about how the looming battle will ultimately unfold. Stretching his weary limbs, Mr. Yevan admits his reluctance to let a child fight, despite his confidence in her. Syria offers a nervous, sweat-beaded smile, her expression betraying the immense pressure of her new, deadly responsibility. Syria notices the village soldiers readying their weapons and asks if their departure from the safety of the castle is imminent. Looking out over the territory, Mr. Yevan explains the necessity of burning their hard-won crops to deny the enemy resources. Syria's worry deepens as Mr. Yevan reveals he can already spot the enemy forces and urges her to stay safe. Mr. Yevan gently pats Syria's head, explaining that Lord Lancel's offer of freedom comes with the risk of sudden death. Close up on his hand, he reminds her of the grim reality that killing is far easier than many people believe. With a determined look, Syria silently promises to keep his heavy words in mind during the trials ahead. Waving a final goodbye, Mr. Yevan leads the small scouting party away, promising to return to Syria soon. A sudden, dark memory of a blood-spattered eye surfaces, signaling a tragic turn in the mission's outcome. A messenger named Nasir Aika arrives to deliver a chilling proclamation from the descendant of the demon god, Saladin IV. Standing with his back to the castle, the messenger offers hollow condolences to the young Lord Lancel. The purple-armored knight coolly explains that they encountered the Baron's small force and killed him in battle. Syria looks on in absolute horror as the enemy messenger offers to return the corpses of the Baron and his knights. Staring in shock, Syria's heart shatters as she realizes the ceasefire is only meant for them to retrieve their dead. The cart returns, bearing the bloodied body of Mr. Yevan, who was ruthlessly cut down while performing his duty. Looking away in grief, Lord Lancel and his retainers react to the news of the Baron's death and the surrender demand. With his purple hair tied back, Lord Lancel asks if anyone is brave enough to leave the safety of the walls. Commander Astel looks on with a somber expression as he prepares to address the gravity of their situation. Breaking the heavy silence, Syria courageously steps forward and volunteers to go outside to retrieve the fallen. Despite the tears streaming down her face, Syria's expression is filled with a new, fierce determination to honor her friend. Commander Astel yells at his hesitating soldiers, shaming them for letting a mere child lead the way into danger. Close up on Astel's face, he recalls the first time he saw her, marveling at the strength she currently displays. Standing small between the towering armored knights, Syria's intense gaze surprises the battle-hardened commander. Looking at the girl's profile, Astel wonders if the brutal reality of war has already fundamentally altered her view of life. A rhythmic rattle sounds as a wooden cart moves through the stone courtyard, carrying the grim burden of the dead. From the distance, the enemy soldiers snicker and mock the alien forces for relying on a child to fight their war. The sharp push sounds as an arrow narrowly misses Commander Astel, prompting him to shout a warning to his men. The alien forces are filled with outrage at the enemy's bold and mocking attempt to intimidate them. A mocking cackle echoes from the enemy lines, prompting Commander Astel to demand a swift and decisive retaliation. Syria points toward the distant enemy encampment, confidently claiming she can strike the soldier who just mocked them. Commander Astel stares at her in pure disbelief, shocked by her claim of such incredible range. Looking out at a target 300 yards away, Syria focuses her blue eyes and insists she can make the shot. A steady pull sounds as Syria draws her bow, while the commander advises her to aim for the flag first. Astel realizes that hitting the flag will silence the enemy and prove she is a threat to their commander. Narrative text reflects on the cold impartiality of death, claiming it claims nobles and serfs alike without hesitation. A solid thwack sounds as Sirius's arrow strikes true, perfectly hitting the distant target and delivering a grim message. Watching the arrow land, the knights stand in silence as Syria experiences the heavy weight of her first kill. A massive cheer erupts from the castle walls as the soldiers celebrate Syria's incredible feat of marksmanship. Reaching out to touch the wooden cart, Syria whispers a final, heartbreaking goodbye to her fallen mentor. Standing alone by the cart under the twilight sky, Syria mourns Mr. Yevan, her innocence lost to the war. A rhythmic hoot and hoot sound as the castle stands silent, the news of Syria's role spreading through the night. Leaning against the stone wall at night, Commander Astel justifies drafting Syria due to their severely diminished numbers. Clenching his armored hand, Astel recalls her impressive performance at the banquet and knows they need her skill. Astel speaks to the scouting instructor, expressing complete confidence in his assessment of the girl's archery talent. The green-cloaked instructor remains silent, his stoic expression reflecting the heavy burden of training a child for battle. The green-cloaked instructor voices his concern, noting that Syria is still far too young for such horrors. Standing on the moonlit ramparts, the instructor warns Lord Lancel that sending an unproven child into war is reckless. Lancel gazes at the horizon, grimly acknowledging that no one is safe if the castle's defenses are breached. A tight close-up on the instructor's eye captures his silent, lingering doubt regarding the young girl's survival. Amidst a backdrop of fading flowers, the narrative reflects on how the upcoming bloodshed is unbearable, even for adults. Clasping his chest, the instructor laments the inevitable mass casualties that will soon stain their territory. In a somber corner, a woman with auburn hair wonders aloud if a child could ever endure such trauma. Rain-like lines emphasize the gravity of the woman's question as she worries for Syria's fragile mental state. Looking down at the blood-stained courtyard, Syria stands near the fallen as the narrative focuses on her internal agony. A servant girl delivers a tray of sausages, urging the weary villagers to eat before the enemy reaches them. Despite the hunger, a soldier complains about the foul scent of the rations as Syria watches from the shadows. Syria stares blankly at the small piece of meat in her hand, the weight of grief dampening her appetite. Close up on Syria's vibrant blue eyes as she reflects on the meager reward for surviving such a harrowing ordeal. Closing her eyes in a moment of quiet suffering, she feels the hollow emptiness of their current situation. Tucked away against a stone wall, Mr. Yevan's widow weeps, asking Syria why her husband did not return. The grieving woman reminds Syria that she was the one who had the grim task of retrieving the body. Beads of sweat roll down Syria's face as she struggles to find words to comfort the heartbroken widow. Trembling under the pressure of the woman's grief, Syria attempts to speak but finds her voice failing her. Looking out over the village, the narrative reveals the bitter truth that Mr. Yevan was never truly a free man. Tears stream down the widow's face as she addresses both Syria and her late husband's shared social standing. A tear falls from the woman's green eye as she laments their birth as serfs in this forsaken place. Looking toward the blonde girl, the widow explains that their status left them no choice but to get involved. A sudden, sharp crunch sounds as an armored boot stomps on Syria's food during the widow's tirade against the war. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Syria lets out a small gasp as she looks up in shock. Lord Lancel leaps back in a comical panic, realizing he has accidentally crushed the girl's dinner under his boot. Flustered and sweating, Lancel offers a frantic apology, though Syria insists she was the one who dropped it. Adjusting his silver armor, he formally declares that he is now Lord Harper, assuming his late father's heavy responsibilities. Looking at the castle towers, Harper admits he hasn't inherited the title yet, but the transition is now unavoidable. Syria stares up at the young lord with wide, curious eyes, wondering why he has approached her now. A rhythmic jingle sounds as Harper reveals 3 gold coins in his palm, intended as a payment or reward. Stunned by the sudden wealth, Syria holds the coins in her trembling hands, her expression one of utter disbelief. Abstract shapes represent the looming threat, as the narrative notes the enemy is taking their time to eat. Despite the money being enough to feed her family for weeks, a sense of nausea overcomes Syria's spirit. Standing with her back to the world, the blonde girl contemplates the heavy price of the gold she holds. Against a backdrop of stars, Lord Harper cheerfully encourages Syria to give her her absolute best in the next fight. The atmosphere shifts instantly as Lord Harper is informed that the Heron soldiers are finally advancing in formation. Harper's face tenses with sudden anxiety as he realizes the enemy is prepared to strike much sooner than expected. The massive stone gate stands as the final barrier between the village and the approaching Imperial army. Raising a steel-clad fist, Harper declares the start of a full-out war as archers draw their bows above. A booming command to fire echoes across the battlements as the first volley of arrows is released. Syria watches from the wall as a deadly rain of fire arrows illuminates the twilight sky like falling stars. Her blue eyes reflect the flickering orange light, identifying the projectiles as the Heron Empire's signature fire arrows. A sudden bang and boom sound as a soldier is struck, the narrative warning that these flames are inextinguishable. Panicked screams fill the air as Syria realizes the brutal reality of the war has finally arrived in full. Sparks fly past her face as Syria recalls Mr. Yevan's warning that the flames would eventually consume her too. Gazing at the chaos, she wonders with a numb heart how taking a life can be so disturbingly easy. A sharp call of her name snaps Syria back to reality as she looks toward her commanding officer. The commander points toward the approaching enemy knights, emphasizing that they are the primary threat that must be neutralized. Standing near the edge, the commander explains that standard arrows will never penetrate the knights' heavy steel plating. Turning to the young archer, the commander asks if she is capable of eliminating the knights before they reach them. A rhythmic pull sounds as Syria draws her bow, noting she has never used steel arrows before as a serf. Close up on the girl's determined face, she reflects on the unique advantages of using simpler stone-tipped arrows in battle. Aiming toward the distant riders, Syria acknowledges that stone lacks the destructive power of steel, but serves its own purpose. A sudden kapow sounds as Syria's arrow finds its mark, demonstrating that stone can still inflict lethal damage on armored foes. A strangled Keeg escapes the knight as he is struck, the force of the arrow knocking him from his horse. Cries of hurrah fill the air as the soldiers celebrate Syria's incredible feat of taking down a heavy Imperial knight. Looking down from the stone battlements, Syria stands in silence, her expression shadowed by the grim reality of her first kill. Shouts to push ladders and throw stones echo across the walls as the Elian forces struggle to repel the invaders. From behind, Syria hears desperate commands to pour boiling water on the Imperial soldiers as the castle's defenses begin to buckle. Floating in a dark, misty void, a confused Syria calls out for her mother and father, searching for her family. Haunted by her actions, the young girl wonders why she had to die in a foreign land just for following orders. A ghostly brown-haired knight in silver plate armor reaches out, demanding that Syria tell him why he had to die. Tears stream from the fallen knight's eyes as he confronts the child whose arrow ended his life on the battlefield. Syria falters and staggers back as the ghost asks why she chose to shoot and kill him during the siege. A sudden bump sounds as Syria defends her actions, crying that she was only following Commander Ostel's direct orders. Looking down at the huddled girl, Commander Ostel asks Syria how it feels to finally experience the weight of war. Ostel looks toward the burning horizon, remarking on the terrifying ease with which humans kill one another during conflict. The commander explains that some kill for their own gain, while others are forced to act on the commands of others. Turning away, Ostel suggests that everyone lives their lives tethered to something that dictates their most brutal and difficult choices. Narrative text reflects on how adults build strong internal walls to protect their true selves after surviving such horrific trauma. Walking past the commander, Syria wonders aloud if any trace of her existence will remain in the world after she dies. Syria calls out for Mr. Yevan as Ostel laments exposing such a young girl to the horrors of the world. A hand reaches for a framed memory of Yevan and Syria, a final plea to survive and find true freedom. A sudden flash illuminates the night as a soldier screams a warning of a devastating Imperial surprise attack. Panic erupts as the enemy storms the castle, and desperate voices urge everyone to run for their lives immediately. Surrounded by leaping flames, Syria looks at the crumbling towers in shock, wondering how the castle's defense failed so completely. Rushing to Commander Ostel, Syria frantically asks how the Heron soldiers managed to bypass their frontline defenses in the night. Ostel reveals the enemy's trickery, explaining they used the river to sneak through the back gate and bypass the guards. Looking at the burning ruins, the commander grimly assumes the guards at the rear gate were the first victims of the breach. Softening his gaze, Ostel thanks Syria, acknowledging that her earlier success gave them a crucial head start against the invaders. Recalling Mr. Yevan's dying wish, the commander reflects on the internal conflict of involving a child in a hopeless war. Ostel admits he believed everyone capable must fight to save the many, even as they face a destined, bitter defeat. Standing amidst the fire with his sword drawn, the commander gives his final, heart-wrenching order for Syria to run away. Crying bitterly, the young girl listens as her officer insists there is no point in sacrificing her life in this useless fight. A sharp clench sounds as Ostel urges Syria to find her family and escape the castle before it is too late. A sudden sprint sounds as Syria's foot kicks off the stone floor, her desperate flight through the burning castle beginning. Chaos spreads as voices shout that the enemy has breached the main castle and Lord Lancel is already among the dead. Desperate cries fill the smoky air as survivors scramble to escape, realizing that their resistance has finally reached its end. Running through the flames, Syria realizes that escaping means she may never see Ostel or Mr. Yevan ever again. A sudden halt sounds as Syria faces armored knights, wondering who will remember the fallen if she does not survive. The Imperial soldiers spot Syria, identifying her as the lethal archer who caused them so much grief on the battlements. Knights charge toward the small girl, their angry shouts marking her as their primary target in the burning courtyard. A quick whip sounds as Syria narrowly dodges a strike, her blue eyes wide with adrenaline-fueled terror and desperation. A heavy grab sounds as an iron-clawed hand seizes the girl's arm, the knight sneering as he prevents her escape. A sharp slash sounds as Syria fights back with a small blade, fueled by a fierce primal need to survive. Syria slips through the grasp of the towering knights, leaving them frustrated as she navigates the chaos of the courtyard. Running toward the outer castle wall, the blonde girl's heart pounds with the singular, frantic desire to avoid a brutal death. Reaching the stone edge, Syria hesitates for a split second as the knights realize she has no path left but down. In a final, desperate act of survival, Syria leaps from the high castle ramparts into the dark abyss of the night. The scene fades into an abstract, dark blue void as the girl plunges toward her uncertain and terrifying fate. Her world plunging into darkness, Syria's face tenses as she confronts an overwhelming, oppressive void. A massive guardian dragon, Antith, silhouetted against the stars, reportedly annihilated the enemy forces in a single strike. Standing tall in his red cape, Kyle Elian acknowledges a knight's address while preparing to address his subjects. Proclaiming divine protection, the blonde crown prince Kyle Elian gloats that the dragon's appearance proves his empire's righteousness. A weary knight warns the prince of the high casualty count suffered during the guardian dragon's recent capture. Behind heavy iron bars, the majestic white-feathered dragon sits imprisoned, its beauty drawing gasps from its captors. Introduced amidst blue flowers, Antarion Magadan stands as the illegitimate child of the king, his blue eyes reflecting uncertainty. Under a vast night sky, voices discuss Heron's halted march and the looming threat of an impending surprise attack. The brown-haired Commander Astal urges Antarion not to overwork himself while hoping the prince successfully tames the dragon. Commander Astal frowns, noting the prince's arrogance has only increased since the guardian dragon appeared at Castle Harper. Looking toward the castle, the commander explains that a successful pact would end the prince's obsessive paranoia over Antarion. A close-up on Antarion's piercing blue eye reveals his deep skepticism regarding a guardian dragon appearing without its master. Walking past fresh bloodstains on the floor, the narrator questions how the prince can hope to tame a wild dragon. Frustration boils over as Kyle Alion shouts a curse, storming through the castle after a failed attempt at control. Two knights break into a cold sweat as the prince demands to know why the dragon refused his blood. From behind, the knights whisper about the dragon's rage and how the prince nearly lost his hand in the encounter. Kyle Alion stops in his tracks, his cold gaze shifting as he realizes his own subordinates are gossiping about him. Turning with a menacing glare, the prince asks the terrified knights how they dare mock him in his presence. Hovering above them like a dark omen, the prince threatens to strip them of their knighthoods as they beg. A vein throbs on Kyle Elion's face as he turns toward a new interruption, his patience wearing dangerously thin. Sacred texts explain that Antith are divine guardians who draw strength exclusively from the blood of the Imperial family. The narrative emphasizes that it is a dragon's inevitable destiny to form a pact with a member of the royalty. Echoes of "another damn it" ring through the halls as the prince continues his retreat from the dragon's cage. Nursing his bruised ego, the blonde man wonders why he is being rejected by the only creature he needs. A chilling resolve fills Kyle Elion's eyes as he decides that an uncooperative dragon should simply be destroyed. In the castle depths, a group of prisoners is revealed, with blonde Syria bound and kneeling on the floor. Syria bows her head in exhaustion as someone calls out for Sir Melian among the group of captured serfs. Looking down at the captives, Kyle Elion sneers with absolute disgust, demanding to know what these filthy things are. A knight explains that these are the runaway serfs captured at the riverbank during the chaos of the retreat. Towering over her, the prince declares that the presence of such pathetic peasants in his room is physically sickening. A sharp "ah" sounds as Kyle Elion violently grabs Syria's blonde hair, yanking her head back with cruel force. The prince's expression shifts to murderous shock as he sees Syria's blonde hair and blue eyes up close. Kyle Alion explains that these specific traits are indicative of dragon blood, reserved exclusively for the rightful Imperial family. Syria's heart stops as the prince declares that anyone possessing these traits outside the royal line is a traitor. A bloody backdrop underscores the grim reality that Imperial law mandates the immediate execution of anyone born with these traits. Trembling with fear, Syria tries to offer a defense, her voice failing as she whispers a desperate "but." Shocked into tears, the girl cries out that she was never told her appearance was a crime against the crown. Syria recalls her time as a soldier, pleading that her service to Elion should count for something more than death. Haunted by visions of her family, the blonde girl begs for her life to be spared by the indifferent prince. Kyle Alion stares back with cold, empty eyes, dismissing her service as irrelevant to her crime of existing. The knights watch nervously as the prince's hysteria returns, muttering that they should pretend not to see his cruelty. Raising his voice with authority, the prince barks a command to a nearby soldier who responds with immediate, fearful obedience. Facing away from her doom, Syria hears the prince's horrific order to feed her to the dragon. With a sickening smirk, Kyle Alion orders the knights to gouge her eyes out before she is imprisoned forever. A knight's protest is met with a sharp roar from the prince, who demands absolute obedience to his decree. Syria despairs, wondering what she did to deserve such cruelty as the prince turns his back on her suffering. Walking away, the prince ignores the girl's desperate pleas for mercy as the executioners prepare to carry out his orders. Desperate screams of "no" and "stop" fill the air as the screen fades into a dark, blood-spattered scene. A sudden "ah" sounds as Syria's world is plunged into darkness, her cries of pain echoing the loss of her sight. Covered in blood and clutching her face, Syria begs for her life while the knights hesitate in grim silence. A knight dismisses Syria's suffering, stating there is nothing more they can do for her now. Looking at her bloodied hair, the soldier concludes she is beyond saving in the wake of the order. Bound and broken, the blonde girl hangs her head in the dark, oppressive shadows of the prison. A sharp scoff sounds as Syria finds a final, bitter trace of defiance in her wounded soul. Laughing weakly, the girl reflects on her desperate, now seemingly futile, struggled to survive against all odds. Syria laments being doomed to a cruel, inevitable death from the very moment of her birth. A single haunting question remains in the shimmering void. What exactly was the purpose of her survival? The narrative shifts to the dragon, addressing the mighty guardian as it sits in its stone cage. The story reflects on a past bond with a dragon who was once a deeply cherished friend. Though the friend departed for a greater realm, his sweet and clever nature remains etched in memory. Flashbacks show a younger Syria caring for a small, gray dragon amidst the warmth of lush foliage. The little dragon smiles warmly, reflecting the mercy and wisdom Syria showed it during their childhood. In the present, the majestic white dragon sits silently within the cold, dark stone walls of its prison. A sudden flash sounds as Syria is pulled from the darkness by a voice calling her name. Shocked to find herself alive, Syria stares at her hand, realizing her sight has been miraculously restored. Stunned, the girl finds her wounds healed, just as the white dragon acknowledges her presence in the cell. The white dragon looks down with a gentle gaze, identifying the blonde girl as its true friend. Glowing with affection, the creature expresses how deeply it missed her during their long, painful separation. Syria looks up in wide-eyed wonder, barely able to believe the majestic creature before her is her companion. The dragon speaks her name, Cisellia, bridging the gap between their innocent past and this dark present. A warm hug sounds as Syria clings to the massive dragon, tearfully out to her friend Sizz. Reunited at last, the pair shares a moment of deep emotional relief and joy within the dungeon. Sizz notes how much she has grown, complimenting her beauty as they bond once more after years apart. Wiping away a tear, Syria smiles and asks what finally brought her old friend back to her. The dragon reveals it sensed her life was in grave peril and rushed across the lands to her. Sizz explains it first sought her at her old village, only to find it consumed by enemy fire. Burning with protective rage, the dragon admits it destroyed everything in sight while desperately searching for her. Syria clarifies that she had already fled into the river to escape the enemy before the dragon's arrival. She recounts being captured and brought here as a serf, which led to her current plight and suffering. Sizz nuzzles her affectionately, expressing a deep, sorrowful regret for not arriving earlier to shield her from pain. Overwhelmed by gratitude, Syria thanks the dragon for remembering her and coming to her rescue in time. The girl questions how the dragon was able to sense her danger from such a great distance. Processing the dragon's words, Syria is stunned by the revelation of dragon blood and souls hidden within humans. Sizz observes that Syria was completely unaware of the significance when she once shared her blood with him. Lost in thought, the blonde girl begins to grasp the hidden royal power flowing through her own veins. History reveals ancient dragons once possessed the divine ability to transform into many different types of creatures. The narrative explains that the age of dragons faded as the world's magic slowly began to vanish forever. A regally scaled golden dragon stands tall, representing the fading glory of a once magical and vibrant era. The first dragon blood heirs were humans born with the dragon's magic flowing directly through their veins. Ancient texts explain how these heirs were first created to carry the dragon's legacy forward through time. These individuals possessing dragon souls eventually became the founders of the powerful Elian Imperial family. Sizz uses a blackboard to playfully teach Syria about the complex and royal history of her lineage. The dragon prepares to explain the second crucial decision made by the ancient dragon ancestor, Elian. Elian used his own body to create new dragons that could thrive even without consuming external magic. Sizz identifies its own kind as the product of that ancient, life-sustaining transformation by the dragon ancestor. The story concludes that these descendants continue to carry the dragon lineage into the present world. Sizz explains that their shared history is etched into their blood across every new growing generation. Syria realizes her royal appearance is exactly why Prince Kyle Elian saw her as a mortal threat. In a peaceful vision, Syria and her small friend Sizz enjoy a moment of pure, flower-filled happiness. The narrative confirms that their fateful reunion marked the final fulfillment of their ancient and sacred pact. Sizz explains that Syria's sacrifice of her own blood served as the first proof of her worthiness. A soft feather drifts down as the dragon acknowledges the purity of her soul as the second requirement. Focusing on his powerful claws, Sizz reveals that only one final step remains to solidify their bond. In the dimly lit cell, the majestic white dragon towers protectively over the small blonde girl. Syria remains silent, a single bead of sweat tracing her face as she processes the dragon's profound revelations. The blonde girl confesses the darkness she endured to survive, even admitting to taking lives during the war. Syria reflects on the prince's cruelty, recalling his hateful words just moments before her world went dark. With a somber gaze, she repeats the prince's claim that her very existence was a crime from birth. Haunted by a vision of a mountain of corpses, she wonders if her protectors would still be alive. Sizz watches Syria from behind, sensing the heavy burden of guilt and grief weighing on her heart. The girl looks away, insisting she is merely a lowly serf who will only bring the dragon down. A sharp gasp escapes her as something unexpected catches her attention, pulling her from her self-loathing thoughts. Sizz reminds her that he was once a helpless, starving hatchling who only lived because of her kindness. Looming over her, the dragon dismisses her social status, caring only for the heart that saved his life. Soft feathers fall around her as Sizz promises to offer her comfort and reassurance whenever she feels lost. Tears shimmer in Syria's vibrant blue eye, reflecting her deep emotional response to the dragon's unwavering loyalty. Reaching out, the girl seeks a bond based on friendship rather than the hierarchy of master and servant. A sudden, violent shatter rings out as the scene shifts to a palace room where glass lies broken. A teacup rolls across the floor as Prince Kyle Elian stands in a fury, his back to the viewer. A panicked knight tries to pacify the prince, but Kyle Elian demands an immediate answer to his questions. Threatening the soldiers' lives, the prince makes it clear that mocking his authority will result in immediate execution. Kyle Elian's face contorts with rage at the thought of a peasant girl successfully forming a dragon pact. Bathed in a divine light, Syria stands tall among falling feathers, her resolve strengthening despite her dire situation. A sudden, sharp halt sounds as the prince's boots click against the polished floor, ending his frantic pacing. Kyle Elian narrows his eyes, his mouth set in a grim line as he concludes there is only one solution. Over a swirling, dark backdrop, the blonde prince declares that both the dragon and Syria must be eliminated. Entuus, the Count Palatine, is visibly shaken as he questions the prince's horrifying order to commit murder. The prince argues that a serf controlling a guardian dragon destroys the very legitimacy of the Imperial line. Kyle Elian emphasizes the urgency of the situation, noting that the Elian Empire is currently embroiled in war. Pointing a finger, the prince orders the count to ensure every witness to the pact is silenced forever. The count's eyes widen in terror as he realizes the prince is essentially demanding a regional massacre. Internal reflections reveal the prince's jealousy over the previous dragon choosing his brother, the second prince, instead. Standing before his erratic master, the count resolves that he cannot allow a dragon's pact maker to be slaughtered. Entwith carefully advises the prince that killing the girl would be a strategic blunder in their current position. A frustrated escapes the prince as the count explains the immense value of a guardian dragon in wartime. The count points out that too many people have already seen the dragon, making a quiet cover-up impossible. He warns that if the emperor discovered the truth, the prince's own claim to power would be jeopardized. Bowing his head slightly, the count requests that Kyle Elian reconsider his impulsive and dangerous decision. Deep in the dungeon, a tray of roasted food is offered to the unlikely pair of prisoners. A sharp glance from Sizz's piercing blue eye sends a wave of fear through the knight on duty. Letting out a terrified eek, the soldier turns and makes a frantic rush away from the dragon's cage. Syria chuckles softly, amused by the sudden change in treatment she receives now that Sizz is her protector. Picking up a piece of food, the girl realizes that the Imperial family's true interest lies in the dragon. A shadow of worry crosses her face as she contemplates the deadly consequences if she and Sizz are separated. The dragon speaks her name, sensing her rising anxiety and pulling her back to the present moment. Sizz leans his massive head toward her, gently telling her to release her fears and trust in him. Syria looks up, her blue eyes filled with wonder and a growing sense of security in his presence. Smiling warmly, the girl thanks her dragon friend, finding the strength to face whatever comes next. A sudden announcement heralds the arrival of the crown prince, his presence casting a pall over the dungeon. Kyle Elian enters the area with a look of pure disgust, tisking at the filth while ignoring the flowers. Strengthening her resolve, Syria stares ahead, declaring she has no reason to feel fear anymore. Prince Kyle Elian mocks her audacity, coldly claiming her life is forfeit for inconveniencing his royal presence. A heavy pound and thump echo through Syria's chest as she struggles against her overwhelming terror. Her heart continues a frantic, rhythmic pound as she attempts to maintain her composure under the prince's gaze. With a steadying thump of her heart, the girl silently vows that she will not let death take her. Looming with royal arrogance, the prince snarls at Syria's lack of respect, demanding an immediate proper greeting. Bathed in a soft light among white flowers, Syria stands firm, her spirit unbroken by the prince's hostility. Letting out a weary sigh, the blonde girl closes her eyes, absorbing the weight of her current circumstances. Syria meets his gaze with fierce determination, demanding that the restraints on her dragon friend be removed immediately. She proposes a quiet life for them both in the dark forest, causing the prince a flare of irritation. Enraged by her tone, the prince shouts at the girl for failing to acknowledge his status as crown prince. Kyle Alian scoffs at her plans, reminding her that guardian dragons are property of the empire, not a peasant. Looking down with murderous intent, the prince reflects on his regret for not executing her for treason sooner. The prince threatens a brutal execution, while the brown-haired Count Antith desperately pleads for his royal master to calm down. Internal chibi reflections revealed the Count questioning his loyalty to an empire that uses humans as dragon feed. Realizing the prince's volatility, the chibi Count concludes that further conversation right now is a dangerous mistake. Seeking comfort, Syria curls up inside the dungeon cage, leaning against the warm, white scales of her dragon.
Antith asks if she intends to stay imprisoned. Syria confirms she will never leave Sizz's side while he's caged.
Approaching the bars with a respectful demeanor, the Count requests a private moment to speak with the girl.
Recognizing him as the prince's companion, Syria listens as the man introduces himself by his name, Antith.
Antith holds up a lantern, claiming he only wished to check if the prisoner required any basic necessities. Syria remains silent, her skeptical and sharp gaze conveying her deep distrust of the royal official's sudden kindness. The girl requests weapons for her protection, and the Count surprisingly agrees to procure a bow and dagger. Syria describes her proficiency with heavy bows, leading Antith to offer her a powerful military-grade longbow instead. A massive yawn escapes the dragon as Syria asks the Count why he is helping her without orders. She questions the logic of his aid, noting that a lowly serf like her rarely receives such high-level attention. Syria repeats the prince's cruel decree that her very existence as a royal lookalike is a crime punishable by death. Looking at her with a soft expression, Antith asks if she finds his risky willingness to help her suspicious. He explains he has two distinct reasons for aiding her, asking if she prefers the practical or impractical explanation. Chibi Syria chooses the practical reason first, earning a small, lighthearted laugh from the bearded Count. Visualizing the white spires of Cestal, the Count predicts that her destiny lies within the capital's Imperial palace. A shocked, "Huh?" escapes Syria as her eye widens in total disbelief at the man's unexpected prediction. Chibi Syria objects, but Antith explains the Empire will never let a guardian dragon live in peaceful isolation. He presents her grim reality. She must either become an Imperial Dragon Knight or face a double execution. The Count places his bet on her success in the capital, believing it her only path to survival. Syria looks away, her expression somber as she processes the impossible choices being forced upon her and Sizz. Turning back toward the bars, the girl asks to hear the impractical reason the Count had mentioned earlier. Antith looks at the girl with a gaze full of unspoken sympathy, his composure softening for a brief moment. Under a vast, starlit sky, the Count reflects on the cruelty of sending a traumatized child back into war. Outside the stone fortress, Antith's voice drifts through the night, telling Syria to rest and ease her worries. Surrounded by flowers, Chibi Sizz notes that Sirius's dragon blood is far purer than the Crown Prince's fading lineage. A torch flickers on the dungeon wall as a rhythmic step echoes through the corridor, signaling someone's arrival. A heavy step stops at the cell as a haughty humph voices a royal's disgust with the dungeon's odor. Prince Kyle Elian and Count Antith stand before the cage, their presence bringing a new tension to the cell. The prince glares sideways, his arrogance palpable, as he continues to complain about the lowly conditions of the dungeon. Syria retorts with sharp wit, suggesting the prince simply stop visiting if the environment is so beneath him. Outraged by her disrespect, the prince fumes while Antith tries to mediate the growing hostility between them. The Count offers a final reassurance to the girl, promising that the upcoming proceedings will not cause her harm. Antith prepares to read a royal decree from the Emperor of Elian while the prince waits with crossed arms. As the announcement begins, Syria finds comfort in Sizz's presence, believing his strength will protect her from any danger. Syria's gaze hardens as she secretly contemplates a violent strike against the prince to ensure her own survival. Peering into the cell, Prince Kyle and Count Antith find the girl startled by their sudden looming presence. A swirling darkness envelops her thoughts as she recoils from the murderous impulse she just harbored toward royalty. Looking at her trembling hands, the blonde girl wonders how she could so easily decide to take a life. Shadows of doubt and thorny visions haunt her as she questions the darkness growing within her own spirit. Reflections of the prince shatter across her vision, deepening her fear that her very nature has become fundamentally broken. Kyle Alian reveals that a thorough investigation into her lineage has yielded a shocking truth about her royal identity. The blonde girl stares in disbelief as the prince officially names her Alfaria, the third princess of the empire. Stunned by the sudden elevation in status, the girl struggles to reconcile her lowly past with her new title. A comical image of Sizz captures his shock as the prince demands the girl return to the capital immediately. Kyle Alian acknowledges her past suffering while insisting she must now accept her new role within the Imperial family. Stepping into the palace, the girl is awestruck by the shimmering grandeur and opulence surrounding her at every turn. She marvels at the luxury until a sudden, sharp halt signals her arrival before the waiting crown prince. The blonde prince explains that her history will be rewritten to portray her as a princess raised in hardship. Despite his insults regarding her peasant upbringing, the prince sternly orders her to maintain proper decorum at court. Seeking assurance, the girl identity guarantees safety for both her and her dragon companion. Marianara, the count's wife, bows politely and offers her assistance in preparing the girl for her new life. The girl tentatively tries to decline the fuss, but the prince's cold, annoyed expression makes her hesitation difficult. A playful, quick drag sounds as Marianara whisks her away for a much-needed bath despite her startled protests. Steam rises as the girl with heat and the overwhelming weight of her sudden transformation. Relaxing in the bath, she reflects on the surreal transition from a soot-covered serf to the noble Princess Alfaria. Her vibrant blue eye reflects deep uncertainty as she ponders the uncertain future awaiting her in the Imperial capital. Looking at the prince's back, she is haunted by the memory of her own desperate desire to kill him. Dark visions of blood and shadows fill her mind, sparking a fear that she is becoming a complete stranger. Maria Nara checks on her through a screen, and the girl confirms she has finished her long, contemplative bath. Wrapped in a white robe, the girl listens as the noblewoman marvels at how beautifully she has matured. Feeling incredibly awkward, the girl receives a gentle reminder that she must grow accustomed to such royal treatment. Facing the mirror, the girl watches as attendants begin the elaborate process of styling her long blonde hair. As she is fitted for her gown, Syria notes that while her body is comfortable, her mind is not. Determination flickers in her eyes as she prepares to navigate the dangerous political waters of her new reality. She takes comfort in the sacred pact with Sizz, knowing the dragon remains her most loyal and powerful protector. A chilling thought reminds her that any threat to her safety would trigger her dragon's lethal protective rage. Glancing at the shackles depicted in her mind, she resolves to stay vigilant despite her newfound royal comforts. Marianara announces that the transformation is complete, signaling the end of her first formal dressing session. Resplendent in a dark blue gown, the girl graciously accepts the noblewoman's apologies for the modest preparations. The noblewoman extends an invitation from Count Antith to join him for dinner, piquing the girl's guarded curiosity. Walking through the palace corridors, the blonde girl prepares herself to face the social and political challenges ahead. She views the upcoming meal as a vital opportunity to gather information and assess the true intentions of her hosts. An official announcement marks her entrance into the dining room, where she is received as a true highness. Count Antith and his wife greet her warmly, once again complimenting her striking beauty in her formal attire. Seated before a spread of delicacies, the girl modestly deflects praise while keeping her senses sharply attuned to everything. The Count dismisses the servants, clearing the room for a private conversation between him and the new princess. Noting the man's keen perception, she listens as he invites her to address him simply as Sir Antith. She addresses Antith with a serious tone, stating she believes him to be the most trustworthy person present. She questions why the Emperor has made such a sudden decision regarding her status and her return. Her resolve hardens into a silent vow of survival, while she remains deeply skeptical of the Imperial machinations. A sharp flash of realization crosses her eyes as she processes the potential dangers hidden within her new life. Over a lavish table, the girl confronts the Count, asking if her current situation is merely an elaborate setup. Antith admits his genuine impression of her sharp analytical skills and her ability to stay on her guard. The blonde girl maintains her skepticism and suspicious this royal world appears to a former serf. Close up on the blonde girl's face, she is determined not to let her journey end in a meaningless death. A white-gloved hand clenches as Sir Antith prepares to explain the most critical aspects of her new royal life. Facing a tray of sweets, the blonde girl recalls the harsh terms used during her recent time in imprisonment. Antith explains the Empire seeks to bind her and her dragon to the crown due to her physical resemblance. Distracted by chocolate cake, the girl admits that entering a noble registry feels like an overwhelming and unwelcome burden. Blushing while she eats, the girl receives a gentle teasing from the Count regarding her newfound love for desserts. A short, dry ahem sounds as the girl clears her throat to ask what being an archduke's daughter entails. Text reveals the fabricated truth. She is officially named the secret daughter of the late Archduke Lankin Alfia. In a moment of lighthearted banter, the girl demands more details, while the Count admits his knowledge is limited. Under the starry sky of the manor, the Count shares that the Archduke died young without leaving any heirs. Leaning back with a smirk, the girl points out that secret daughter is just a polite term for a bastard. A bead of sweat forms as she notes that flowery language doesn't change the reality of her social standing. Antith explains that her lack of royal blood prevents her from inheriting the vast territories of the Langchen dukedom. Reclining in his chair, the Count reveals she was registered as a princess and granted Hyacinth Castle instead. Realizing she's been placed in a position with no actual power, the girl looks toward a passing servant. The Count clarifies that her actual influence depends entirely on her performance as the guardian dragon's chosen master. Sir Antith offers a sincere promise to assist her, asking her to place her faith in him and his family. Skeptical, the girl wonders what someone like the Count could possibly see in a former soot-covered peasant serf. Swirling patterns reflect the Count's response, expressing his deep confidence in her unique perception and clear-sighted vision. Over a vision of her piercing blue eyes, the Count praises her resilient mind and her pragmatism toward survival. Closing her eyes, the girl argues that he is overestimating her, as her title is merely a hollow fabrication. The brown-haired man disagrees, reminding her that she is the undisputed master of a rare and powerful dragon. Silhouette visions of the Empire's 3 dragons appear as the Count explains the dire lack of active dragon knights. Antith insists that given the wartime crisis, no one would dare question the legitimacy of a dragon's chosen master. Chibi versions of the pair share a moment of encouragement, with the girl vowing to make wise future decisions. Thinking to herself, the blonde girl concludes that enduring this new royal life is currently her only path forward. A single eye closes in a moment of quiet reflection as she prepares for the trials of the court. Radiant particles frame text highlighting her history as a girl who was forced to fend for herself to survive. A heavy escapes as the girl slumps over a desk piled high with daunting study materials and books. A sudden, sharp slam of a foot against the desk startles the exhausted girl back into her difficult lessons. Lady Marianera smiles warmly, asking the girl if she has successfully memorized the complex Imperial family tree yet. The noblewoman insists that everything must be learned before their departure, leaving the girl feeling quite anxious and overwhelmed. Illustrations depict Marianara's offer to educate the girl in reading, writing, and the intricacies of politics and economics. Girl's surprise, Marianera praises her for picking up the difficult subjects with such remarkable natural speed. Feeling touched by the praise, the girl thanks the noblewoman for her genuine confidence and tireless teaching efforts. Back at the chalkboard, Marianara continues the lesson on noble titles, seemingly never wanting to take a single break. A quill pen scratches across paper, recording the long list of ranks from Archduke down to the lowliest knight. Looking over the girl's shoulder, Marianara explains how the order of authority typically functions within the Elian Empire. Staring at the list, the girl reflects on her past ignorance of the many titles governing this noble world. Visions of soft cakes and cream-filled treats represent the many luxuries she is slowly becoming accustomed to enjoying. A golden candelabra holding beeswax candles symbolizes the clean, bright life she now leads within the Count's manor. Through a window, the girl is seen buried in books, still feeling out of place among such royal grandeur. Clad in a red and black cape, Kyle Elian announces his departure for the battlefield the very next morning. The blonde prince shoots a look back as the Count promises to prepare for the girl's own departure soon. After Kyle offers a backhanded compliment, the girl sharply retorts, causing the Count to try and calm them both. Standing in the grand hall, the girl watches the princes retreating back with a look of intense, guarded focus. Steeling herself, she contemplates the political battle ahead, knowing it will be unlike any hardship she's faced before. 2 days later, a vibrant blue sky greets the girl as she prepares to depart for the Imperial capital. Spotting other teal-colored dragons, the girl asks if they belong to the knights who will be guarding her journey. Antith smiles at the girl's awe, promising that even more dragons await her arrival at the Imperial capital. Princess Alfaria moves with a sudden, swift dash as she prepares for the next stage of her journey.
A warm, celebratory hug greets the girl as the knights acknowledge her new status as a highness.
Petting the massive white dragon, the blonde girl affectionately teases Sizz for being such a sensitive baby. Sizz listens intently as she learns that few dragon breeds possess the intelligence required for direct communication. Mounted atop Sizz, the blonde girl prepares to depart the estate while Sir Antith watches her with concern. With a polite gesture, the Count offers a final blessing, wishing her future to be filled with fortune. Looking back with a bright smile, the girl offers her sincere gratitude to the Antith family for everything. Her hair billows in the wind as she turns toward the horizon, embracing the start of her flight. A formal announcement signals the party's departure, charting a course toward the imperial capital city of Cisellia. Sizz takes flight with a powerful wish, soaring high above the rugged mountain peaks and lush green valleys. Gazing out at the endless blue horizon, the blonde girl marvels at the breathtaking beauty of the world. Sizz grumbles about her past riding skills in a comical exchange, reminding her she once almost fell off. A knight flying alongside her checks in, but the girl assures him that everything is perfectly fine. Despite the majesty of the flight, a look of exhaustion crosses her face as the long journey continues. Her piercing blue eyes reflect a quiet determination to face the challenges awaiting her at the journey's end. Looking down at the sprawling landscape, she is awestruck by the sheer vastness of the Empire's territories. She reflects on how Harper was once her entire world, realizing how small her life used to be. A close focus on her eyes highlights her deep contemplation of the unknown future unfolding before her. A lingering question wonders if it is truly possible to see the farthest reaches of the entire continent. Sizz playfully offers to fly her to the world's edge, promising a journey that would take 2 weeks. The dragon suddenly halts with a sharp pause, causing the girl to wonder what has caught his attention. Startled, she asks Sizz what is happening as the dragon prepares to demonstrate his superior aerial speed. Sizz proudly declares himself far faster than the teal Perunia dragons used by the regular Imperial Knights. The group descends toward a serene river valley as the lead knight calls for a much-needed break. Scanning the campsite, the brown-haired knight looks around in confusion, searching for the whereabouts of the princess. Surrounded by white roses, the girl shares a quiet, intimate moment with her dragon in the peaceful meadow. Observing from a distance, the knights are struck by the sacred, natural way she handles her powerful companion. The girl apologizes for wandering off, explaining that she was busy providing Sizz with unnecessary blood feeding. A conversation beside the river. Standard Perunia dragons only require feeding once a week. To her surprise, the knight explains she will soon be integrated into the Empire's elite Dragon Knight Order. The girl admits she thought all dragons required daily blood, learning that her own connection to Sizz is special. Serving as messengers, the knights announce that lunch is ready, courtesy of the generous House Antith. Taken aback by the informal setup, the girl is surprised to find herself eating alongside her royal guard. With a gentle laugh, she encourages the knights to relax and enjoy their meal without any formalities. The knights are deeply moved by her kindness as she sits on a rock to eat her simple sandwich. Insisting on being useful, the girl offers to help clean up, much to the panicked protest of her guards. One knight admits his initial anxiety, relieved to find that serving the princess is far easier than expected. Reflecting on her lineage, the brown-haired knight acknowledges that she is truly a member of the Imperial family. He feels confident they will bond, while the blonde girl looks on with a bewildered, questioning expression. The knight smiles, finding her humble nature to be a refreshing change from the typical royal attitude. A knight begs her to leave the chores to them, but the girl remains stubborn about helping out. Framed by flowers, the girl's radiant presence leaves the knights feeling optimistic about their new assignment together. The Perunia dragons stand ready as the final orders are given to pack up and resume the flight. After a grueling 5-hour journey through the clouds, the capital city finally appears on the distant horizon. Arriving at the destination, the group looks down upon the majestic spires and walls of Hyacinth Castle. Staring at her massive new questions why such a grand estate was bestowed upon her. The brown-haired knight criticizes the unfairness of her situation, while the girl ponders the hollow words of power. She admits to Sizz that she prefers the isolation of the castle over living with the Imperial family. Noticing a group of dilapidated buildings to the west, she asks about the nature of the urban slums. A knight sternly warns her to stay away from that area, labeling the slums a dangerous hotbed of crime. The blonde girl looks toward the sky, beginning her new life as an Imperial princess. Capital's dangerous high society. Sizz's great wings let out a powerful flap, scattering white feathers as they prepare to land. Formally introduced, Princess Alfaria stands tall as the master of the legendary guardian dragon, Cisellia. Arriving at Hyacinth Castle, the grand staff waits to welcome the princess to her new residence. Baron Axel Rosen and head maid Adin Kalia offer deep bows, introducing themselves to their new master. Alfaria offers a kind, polite smile to the staff, trying to bridge the gap of her low-born past. Her newly assigned attendants. A sudden wave of chills washes over the head maid as she perceives an unexpected intensity from the girl. The princess requests patience from her staff as she adjusts to the complexities of life in the capital. A young, brown-haired maid excitedly spots her new mistress from the top of the castle steps. Liz Cullen introduces herself with a bright smile, eager to begin her duties serving the new princess. Liz is struck by Alfaria's impressive height, finding her mistress to be remarkably radiant and approachable. The head maid reminds the girl that her official crowning ceremony is scheduled for later that same afternoon. Urgency fills the air as the staff insists the princess immediately take a bath and prepare for the ritual. Steeling herself for the transition, Syria accepts the command with a calm, resolute acknowledgement of her royal duties. Text chronicles the incredible journey of Syria, the former serf, as she officially becomes Princess Alfaria of Elian. The sun gleams off the white columns of the palace, signaling the start of a monumental imperial event. A golden ear cuff set with a purple gem serves as a vital tool for the Empire's knights. Descriptions highlight the in-flight communicator, which allows dragon knights to coordinate seamlessly while soaring through the skies. Liz fits a gleaming white gauntlet onto Alfaria's hand, pleased to find the armor is a perfect match. Now clad in full Dragon Knight regalia, Alfaria asks about the previous owner of her second-hand armor. Liz explains the armor once belonged to the only other woman to tame an anti-Systeria dragon. The maid notes that Alfaria has broken that lonely record, becoming the second woman to achieve such status in Knight. Reflection fills the princess's eyes as she contemplates the heavy legacy she now carries upon her shoulders. Soaring over the capital, Andrea glides over the capital while the dragon checks in on her emotional state, falling citied streets below. A gentle voice clouds, the white dragon asks if she feels nervous about the looming confrontation. Citizens look up in awe as the princess admits her anxiety while descending toward the Imperial Square. Overhead, a vision of a green-haired friend offers words of encouragement, promising to stay by her side always. Alfaria focuses on the white scales beneath her, grounding herself before the most important moment of her life. With a gentle look, the princess thanks Sizz for being her constant source of strength and comfort. Clad in her striking white and red armor, Alfaria arrives at the cathedral for her crowning ceremony. The girl recalls Count Antith's stern warning to never let her guard down within the treacherous capital. She remains hyper-vigilant, knowing that in this den of vipers, even a celebration could be a trap. Flashbacks reveal the Count advising her that despite her royal title, the Imperial family remains dangerous. He instructs her to carefully count the rare dragons present to assess the threat of an assassination attempt. Antith warns that if 3 anti-Systerias appear, it is a clear signal that her death is planned. The Count reasons that with the Empire at war, there is no logical excuse for 3 dragons' presence.
Alfaria breathes a sigh of relief upon seeing only 2 dragons, indicating the trap has not been sprung. Sizz identifies the second dragon as Calgadon, earning a compliment for his keen and observant nature.
Alfaria approaches the high throne where the Emperor sits, feeling the weight of the room's intense scrutiny. Emperor Adarian III watches from his throne as the new princess makes her formal approach up the stairs.
Kneeling with her head bowed,
Delves regally upon his throne, draped in furs as he observes the girl approaching him. The Emperor studies her with a calculating gaze, his expression unreadable beneath his well-groomed beard. Tension heightens as Alfaria waits for the ruler to speak, her resolve tested by the silence of the hall. The golden-haired Emperor leaps with a calm but offering a formal welcome to the girl he claims as family. Looking down upon her, he addresses her as his daughter, officially cementing her place within the Imperial line.
While the Emperor expresses joy, the girl offers a humble, rehearsed response of gratitude for her new father.
The ruler turns to Mother Asterica to confirm if the girl possesses the rightful claim to the throne, on the girl's right to inherit. Closing her eyes, the High Priestess finds no fault in the decision, validating Alfaria's status as an heir. Narration reveals Asterica is the second princess and the High Priestess of the Church of the Dragon God. The ornate crown is bestowed upon Alf's head as a divine blessing is invoked for the new princess of the Alian Empire. Crowned and resolute, Alfaria begins the sacred proclamation of her official ascent as a princess of the Empire. Standing beside the Emperor, Alfaria looks out at the Grand Palace, her heart heavy with newfound royal burden. Divine decree names Alfaria the Master of Hyacinth Castle and a member of the elite Dragon Knight Order. A thunderous roar of approval rises from the silhouetted crowds as her inheritance of the throne is announced. Slam! The Emperor's staff strikes the ornate carpet, demanding Alfaria's absolute focus and obedience to his words. Turning with a cold gaze, the Emperor warns her that bloodline appearance does not equate to familial acceptance.
Empress Syria and Princess watch from behind, their expressions dripping with visible contempt for the new princess.
The Emperor bluntly reminds her that her royal status is a tool meant to serve the Empire's military. Recognizing the hostility masked by courtly manners, Alfaria steels herself for the political viper's nest she now inhabits. Princess Agnes sneers at Alfaria's background, mocking the simple name she bestowed upon her majestic guardian dragon. First Princess Fernez observes the tense family dynamic with a knowing, enigmatic smile from behind white roses. Feeling an intense stare, Alfaria turns in the hallway and encounters a young prince watching her with uncertainty. Caught in his silent observation, the third Prince Brute breaks into a nervous sweat, visibly shaken by her presence. Overcome by social anxiety, the blonde prince stammers a quick excuse and flees down the palace corridor.
Asterica lets out a bright laugh, reassuring Alfaria that Prince Brute is harmless and acts like a child.
The High Priestess formally introduces herself, setting a warm and friendly tone for their first private interaction.
With a joyful clasp of hands, Asterica invites Alfaria to visit her at the sacred temple very soon.
Asterica points out that their respective castles are close together, making a short carriage ride the only obstacle. Alfaria is startled to learn that the High Priestess's duties strictly forbid her from ever leaving the temple. Asterica introduces the aloof half-brother, Antarion, noting his role as an official within the Ministry of War. Watching the black-haired man walk away, Alfaria declines a formal introduction, preferring to meet him naturally later. Under the cool light of the moon, the castle stands silent as Alfaria ponders her first day as royalty. Anxious thoughts cloud Alfaria's mind as she reflects on the cold, judgmental eyes of her new Imperial siblings. She vividly remembers the moment her gaze met Antarion's, struck by the overwhelming weight of his presence. Close inspection of Antarion's blue eyes reveals an icy depth that feels more mechanical than human. Despite his cold exterior, Alfaria perceives a flicker of deep, unvoiced loneliness within his piercing stare. A haunting flashback brings to light a younger, more innocent Antarion before tragedy reshaped his world. A knight falls to his knees, delivering the shattering news that Antarion's older brother has been killed in duty. Burdened by guilt, the knight vows to spend the rest of his life atoning for failing his duty. In the quiet aftermath, young Antarion listens as the court whispers conflicting rumors about the suspicious death. The image of his tall, dependable older brother remains etched in his mind as a symbol of lost safety. Heartfelt memories of the brother's rare smiles serve as a bittersweet reminder of a kinder, simpler time. Standing at the funeral in a somber suit, the young boy feels the suffocating weight of false consolation. As he grew, the initial sadness evolved into a calculated drive to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Instead of simple vengeance, Antarion developed a cold, detached clarity regarding the treachery of the Imperial family. Like clockwork gears falling into place, his realization of the world's cruelty hardened his resolve. Snapping back to the present, Antarion senses Alfaria's presence and turns to address the intruder. Surrounded by blooming flowers, Alfaria stops in her tracks, meeting the gaze of her enigmatic half-brother. Alfaria introduces herself and apologizes for missing him during the earlier crowning ceremony. Antarion identifies himself formally, his voice devoid of warmth as he details his military office. He curtly informs her that the festivities are over and suggests she return to Hyacinth Castle immediately. Feeling embarrassed, Alfaria explains that she lost her way while admiring the beauty of the palace grounds. Antarion's eyes narrow with suspicion, wondering if the new princess is secretly spying on the Imperial residence. He provides sharp, efficient directions to the lobby and tells her to find a guard to lead her. Antarion emphasizes that she should never wander the palace alone, especially given her controversial status. He pointedly reminds her that as the third princess, she is now a target for constant observation. Alfaria absorbs his cold warning, looking back as she begins her long walk out of the palace. She offers a final, respectful goodbye, leaving the black-haired man alone in the hallway. Antarion watches her depart, his expression remaining unreadable despite his formal acknowledgement of her rank. As Alfaria disappears down the corridor, Antarion finds himself intrigued by her seemingly genuine and humble nature. Antarion resolves to monitor Alfaria closely, his expression turning cold and suspicious following their brief encounter. Sunlight filters through the ornate bedroom doors as a new morning begins within the luxurious Hyacinth Castle. Awakening to birds chirping, Alfaria gazes at the unfamiliar ceiling, still adjusting to her new life as royalty. The princess sits up, and soon after her birth, a curse was placed upon her, an unbreakable spell. Resting against the intricate headboard, she prepares to face the heavy responsibilities of her first official royal day. Alfaria reflects on her improbable journey from serf to princess while remembering the breathtaking beauty of the palace. Looking through the stone arches, she feels grateful for meeting Antarion instead of a more dangerous family member. She shudders at the thought of a harsh scolding had she encountered the formidable crown prince instead. Standing by her window, Alfaria fixes her hair, steeling herself for the political challenges awaiting her today. A sudden clock sounds as Alfaria enters the room, startling an elderly maid who waits to serve her. Alfaria greets the head maid and asks about the whereabouts of her personal attendant, Liz. While the head maid promises a severe reprimand, Alfaria quickly defends Liz, taking full blame for their delay. The head maid questions the longbow in the princess's hand as Alfaria prepares for her morning exercise. Seeking a mood boost, Alfaria asks to use the courtyard space, which the maid confirms is entirely hers. With a bright, confident smile, the princess prepares to practice her archery and regain her sense of self. A moment of hesitation flickers across Alfaria's face as she contemplates the weight of her new imperial title. A rhythmic dot-dun echoes through the trees as practice targets are set up in a sun-drenched clearing. Alfaria observes that even her makeshift training area feels incredibly grand compared to the simple life she left. Attentive maids scurry to assist the princess, who accepts their presence with a polite, slightly overwhelmed response. Focusing her breathing, Alfaria with practiced grace, demonstrating the skills she learned as a commoner. She realizes with a start that the entire household now moves instantly at her slightest beck and call. Declaring her new identity as Alfaria, she lets fly her arrows while Liz cheers for her impressive accuracy. As Liz offers to wipe her sweat, Alfaria resolves to remove all lingering traces of her former serf life. The princess pauses mid-thought, a hint of conflict touching her eyes as she considers what she must leave behind. She clutches her red gem necklace, looking resolute about the path she must take to survive the palace. Breaking the silence, Alfaria suddenly mentions white bread, causing the head maid to pause in total confusion. Despite the maid's bewilderment, Alfaria maintains a steady, serious look, her mind fixed on a specific past memory. She formally requests that white bread be served with every meal, turning a childhood luxury into a daily requirement. A warm memory surfaces of a kind man sharing bread, representing the simple happiness of her former village life. The heavy bedroom door stands slightly ajar, marking a transition as the princess prepares for her next official duty. A frantic voice calls out to Alfaria from behind, interrupting her quiet walk through the palace corridors. Liz rushes forward, tearfully begging for forgiveness for her unforgivable mistake of oversleeping on such an important morning. Alfaria gently reassures her friend, acknowledging that Liz was exhausted from serving her until late the night before. Liz continues to panic, insisting that it is her fundamental job to serve the princess perfectly at all times.
A question mark appears over Liz's head as Alfaria proposes a very specific and unusual way to atone. Alfaria humbly asks Liz to become her teacher and instruct her in the basics of reading and writing.
Shock freezes Liz in her tracks, her eyes wide as she processes the princess's unexpected and earnest request. Overwhelmed with joy, Liz's eyes sparkle with tears as she enthusiastically agrees to help Alfaria master her education. The bright morning sun shines through clear blue skies, signaling a hopeful new chapter for the young princess. High stone walls of the Imperial palace tower over the greenery, housing the secrets of the Dragon Knight Order.
Alfaria arrives at the military grounds, where a dragon's call greets her as she begins her formal knight training.
Several knights in uniform offer a warm welcome to the princess as she officially joins the Dragon Knight Order. A formal notification confirms her arrival, stating her intention to serve as a high-ranking member of the elite force. Surrounded by blooming flowers, Alfaria offers a friendly greeting to her new comrades, feeling a sense of belonging. Sizz lets out a wide yawn as the knights observe the majestic Cisellia dragon with visible awe. Sizz reacts with shock and sadness upon learning he must be separated from his master during her knightly duties. Alfaria makes a pinky promise to fly with Sizz later, soothing the dragon's anxiety with her gentle words. Moving with purpose, the group leads Alfaria toward the Second Order commander, since the First Order is away. Alfaria follows a knight down a hallway lined with grand portraits of the Empire's most legendary previous commanders.
She reflects on the Empire's long history, noticing how the various uniforms and weapons signify the passage of time.
Alfaria arrives at the Second Order's headquarters, where a knight knocks and announces her presence to the commander. A sharp clack sounds as the door opens, and a calm voice from within grants the princess entry. The elderly, gray-haired Count Tien Varun introduces himself as the official commander of the Second Order of Dragon Knights. Varun apologizes for the simple refreshments provided, but Alfaria graciously insists that the spread will be more than sufficient. Sitting across from her, the commander explains she isn't needed yet while the First Order is busy in battle. Holding a delicate teacup, Alfaria listens as the commander suggests she take some time to rest before her duties. The princess firmly declines the offer of rest, expressing her strong desire to begin her training without wasting time. Setting down her blue and gold teacup, she emphasizes the need to be prepared for battle at any moment. Alfaria insists she cannot simply step onto a battlefield without first undergoing proper knightly training within the Order's walls. A close-up of Varen's yellow eye reveals his silent realization that the princess possesses a true knight's spirit. Pleased by her resolve, Varun agrees to arrange training ground access after the princess asks to tour the facilities. Displaying an ornate purple sword, the commander reminds her that her ceremonial weapon is not suitable for actual combat. As they walk, Varun explains the surprising rule that all knights must personally provide their own weapons and uniforms. Looking up at the Grand Palace towers, Alfaria privately wonders how the royal budget is distributed if gear isn't provided. Varun leads the way through a stone archway, informing the princess that they have reached their first destination. The princess smiles radiantly as Varun points out the massive training hall and the nearby structure housing the dragons. Passing the target range, Varun suggests that longswords would be an appropriate choice for Alfaria's taller, athletic build. Varun promises to show her the Imperial smithy next, prompting a cheerful thank you from the eager new princess. They enter the enormous dragon den, where Alfaria is dwarfed by the massive heads of the majestic creatures residing there. Varun explains that dragons are meaning only royals can keep them at home due to high costs. Petting a dragon's nose, Varun suggests they use a dragon to reach the distant flight training grounds more quickly. A diagram illustrates the differences between feathered and scaled dragons, noting that scaled skin is superior for intense battle. A sudden, deafening roar startles the commander while Alfaria laughs, recognizing a certain familiar dragon's unique charm. Cisellia looms over the wood glowing blue eyes, leading Varun to observe the dragon's obvious jealous streak. Petting a white feathered dragon, even as Varun comments on how much the beast likes her. The commander lets out a confused "pardon?" as the princess continues her affectionate interaction with the giant white dragon. Against a backdrop of soft yellow flowers, Alfaria begins to explain the true nature of her relationship with Cisellia. Wearing a genuine, bright smile, Alfaria proudly declares that she and her dragon, Cisellia, are actually the best of friends. Varun crosses his arms with a thoughtful expression, admitting he has heard rumors about her strange bond with dragons. The commander politely apologizes for his earlier clinical remark about dragon ownership, and Alfaria lightheartedly accepts his sincere apology. Soaring through the clouds, the princess rides a white feathered dragon as they approach the vast flight training grounds. Alfaria looks down in awe at the massive mountain ranges and lands dedicated solely to dragon training and combat drills. Spotting a knight on a swift white dragon nearby, she asks about the different species used by the Knight Order. Varun points out the rocky mountains used for practicing dragon breath, while Alfaria asks about the grounds visible below. Looking down at the targets, Varun mentions crossbow and javelin practice, prompting Alfaria to ask about longbow usage. Varun explains that longbows are considered commoner weapons, leaving a shocked Alfaria wondering if she is forbidden from using them. With a sudden zoom, Alfaria dives toward the targets, leaving Varun in a frantic panic as she begins her demonstration. High above the ground, the princess draws back her bow, determined to recall the archery skills from her past life. She focuses intensely, confident that her experience hitting rampart targets will translate perfectly to shooting from the back of Cisellia. A sharp push sounds as the arrow streaks toward the target, cutting through the air with incredible speed and force. Surprised and confused, Alfaria lets out a bewildered, "Huh?" as she looks down at the results of her first shot. Staring with a bead of sweat on her face, the princess realizes that something went wrong during her aerial attempt. Narration confirms her shocking realization that she has completely missed the target despite her previous confidence and high skill. The arrow lands harmlessly in the dirt with a final roll, far away from the intended target on the range. Varen's dragon flies alongside her as she questions why she missed, despite her prior experience shooting from high vantage points. A helpful diagram explains how combat theory and the dragon's actual flight path caused her arrow to veer off course. Varun takes the lead on his own dragon, offering to demonstrate how dragon knights truly fight during high-speed aerial combat. The commander's dragon tilts its head back as flames begin to flicker around its mouth, preparing for a powerful attack. A massive whoosh erupts as the dragon unleashes an enormous fireball, demonstrating the terrifying and destructive power of its breath. Watching from a distance, Alfaria is visibly stunned and impressed by the incredible power displayed by the seasoned commander's dragon. Alfaria asks if Sizz can also use breath attacks. The dragon indignantly confirms his status as a great anti-hysteria. A sudden swoosh sounds as Sizz takes flight, leaving Alfaria startled by the dragon's abrupt and powerful takeoff. Bracing herself against the wind, Alfaria looks on with determination as they soar through the sky during their training. Sizz tells her to hold on tight before unleashing a powerful blue-flamed breath attack that illuminates the sky. A massive kaboom echoes across the range as the dragon's attack completely obliterates the peak of a distant mountain. Letting out a pained ugh, Alfaria shields her eyes from the blinding light and debris caused by the massive explosion. Still reeling from the shock, the princess stares at the devastating power her dragon companion possesses with wide-eyed realization. A thought bubble emphasizes her awe at the awesome power a guardian dragon can unleash at a moment's notice. As the smoke clears with a soft whish, a massive, jagged crater is revealed where the mountain peak once stood. Stunned by the visual evidence of destruction, Alfaria marvels again at the incredible offensive capabilities of the Imperial dragons. Sizz lets out a heavy pant, explaining that he can only use such high-powered attacks 3 times a day. Noticing the dragon's exhaustion, Alfaria asks if he is tired and offers him a moment to recover from the effort. She kindly suggests that Sizz rest in the dragon den while she heads to the Imperial smithy earlier than planned. Count Varun leads the way across the rugged terrain, agreeing to guide the princess to the Order's specialized weapon facility. Upon arriving, Alfaria is impressed by the facility's size, noting that the Imperial smithy is much larger than she expected. Varun notes the smithy's prestige in the capital and promises that Alfaria's custom sword will be ready for her soon. Alfaria politely hopes she isn't taking up too much of the commander's time, but he insists it is an honor. Varun reveals that the Dragon Knight Order has high expectations for her, causing the princess to react with surprised curiosity. Looking at rows of practice weapons, Alfaria asks if there are any other female knights currently serving in the order. Varun explains that most female-led orders are merely ceremonial high society clubs, lacking any real military or combat duty. Alfaria expresses her disappointment, but Varun mentions that a few rare women have actually achieved high-ranking knightly status. A notification highlights Dame of the First Order, a woman who has earned significant recognition as a warrior. A close-up of a pair of sharp purple eyes suggests the cold, formidable presence of the legendary Dame Elmir. Alfaria recognizes the name as belonging to the Empress's family, realizing Elmir is likely the Empress's own half-sister. Varun groans as he mentions another female knight, Dame Beatrice, who serves in the Fourth Order and the Horse Guard.
An apology for the wait sounds as a blacksmith approaches, signaling that the princess's new weapon is finally ready.
A gleaming steel sword is presented on a decorative background, specifically chosen to suit the princess's tall, athletic build. Finds the blade decent and offers a cheerful thank you to the hard-working blacksmith. Alfaria requests the bill be sent to her castle, secretly worrying about the immense cost of her new equipment. Back at the palace, Madame Adden looks bewildered as Alfaria demands a full record of all the castle's monthly expenses. Reasserting her new position, Alfaria firmly reminds the head maid that she is now the undisputed master of the castle. A diagram illustrates the monthly budget, showing that Imperial family members receive 500 drachos for their living expenses. Madame Adden explains the salary distribution for the servants and staff, detailing how the castle's funds are currently being used. The princess questions the dragon food budget, noting that Sizz's daily diet of livestock shouldn't cost nearly that much. Sweating under the princess's scrutiny, Madame Adden nervously promises to investigate the potential mistake in the financial accounting. Alfaria dismisses her with a simple request to look into it, hiding her growing suspicion behind a calm, cold expression. Observing the maid's hasty exit, Alfaria suspects that several costs have been exaggerated to siphon money away from her. Looking at the palace under the moonlight, the princess resolves to master accounting so she can manage her own finances. A close-up of a wooden practice sword signals the start of another rigorous day of physical training for Alfaria.
Surrounded by blue flowers, Alfaria finishes her session, and the instructor announces the end of today's difficult sword practice.
Letting out a tired woo, Alfaria wipes her brow and thanks the knight for another great and productive training session. Liz rushes forward with a towel, eager to serve her princess perfectly and make up for her previous morning failure. Liz insists she is only doing her job, handing over the towel as Alfaria takes a moment to catch her breath. A colorful chart shows Alfaria's packed daily schedule, illustrating how she balances night duties with her intensive academic studies. Madame Adden interrupts the quiet moment, announcing that an urgent message has arrived from the second princess, Asterica. A dark, mysterious envelope with a black seal and pink floral accents is presented, carrying a formal but tense invitation.
Alfaria asks how the maid identified the sender, noticing there is no name written on the exterior of the envelope.
The maid points to the candelabra crest, explaining that such symbols are the primary way to identify Imperial family households. Madame Adden explains that dragon crests specifically denote those who have made pacts with dragons, signaling Asterica's high status. Alfaria notices the maid's condescending tone and wonders if she will ever truly earn the respect of the palace elite. Alfaria asks the brown hair. Liz reacts with a start as Alfaria asks her to verify her reading. Temple invitation. A formal scroll invites the princess to the Great Temple for tea and a relaxing blessing or something similar. Alfaria breaks out in a nervous sweat, baffled by the High Priestess's surprisingly casual and blunt writing style. Walking through the palace, Alfaria's odd vocabulary while Liz and Madame Adden follow closely behind. Liz tilts her head in confusion, asking the princess what she means about the priestess's unusual choice of words. A portrait explains the strict imperial law forbidding women from marrying outside the high-ranking Amortot family line. The narrative continues with a portrait of Princess Fernez, who was bound by these traditional bloodline preservation rules. Madame Adden sharply warns the princess to watch her tongue after Alfaria calls the marital restrictions completely ridiculous. Alfaria sighs with that she might be destined for a lifetime of solitude under these restrictive royal customs. Madame Adden admits the family dynamics are complex as they continue their walk through the bright, grand hallway of her new situation. Liz peeks into the room, reminding Alfaria that they must choose a suitable outfit for the upcoming temple visit. A large purple notification emphasizes the shock of Alfaria's nearly empty closet, which contains only 2 simple garments. Liz is visibly distressed by the Emperor's neglect, while Alfaria calmly explains their very tight monthly living budget. 2 floating bubbles emphasize her of her upcoming birthday, high society debut, and the mandatory temple visit. Alfaria smiles gently, trying to soothe Liz's mounting frustration and tears with her calm and resilient attitude.
Liz looks down with a hesitant blush, struggling to find words for her concern over the princess's lifestyle.
Dark, shadowy panels reveal other maids, Alfaria, a commoner, and plotting to exploit her for her jewelry. And tall and confident, unaffected by the petty gossip of others. Liz watches her princess with deep admiration as Alfaria prioritizes a life of peace and safety with Cisellia. Beaming with genuine kindness, Alfaria tells Liz not to worry about their hardships, focusing on their shared happiness. A joyful blush colors Liz's face as she enthusiastically accepts the princess's comfort and positive outlook on life. The two friends stand together in the sunlight, united by a bond far stronger than mere servant and royalty. A majestic white carriage waits outside the palace entrance under a brilliant sky, ready for their sacred journey. Now wearing a stunning white and red outfit, Alfaria prepares to depart for the temple with her gift ready. A sharp step sounds as the princess boards the carriage, signaling the start of her visit to the priestess. The carriage wheels let out a rhythmic rattle and clunk as they navigate the paved streets toward the temple. Sitting inside the luxurious carriage, Alfaria and Liz enjoy the rare moment of travel together as they head out. Alfaria marvels at the luxury, while Liz admits she has always longed for the quiet life of the countryside. Resting her face on her hand, Alfaria warmly invites Liz to start a garden with her the following year. Liz looks out the window with excitement, imagining their future cottage and the fun of playing house together. They arrive at the Great Temple of the Dragon, a stunning white architectural marvel under a clear sky. Carrying a large ceremonial box, Liz follows Alfaria as they begin the final mandatory walk into the sanctuary. A close-up captures Alfaria's striking blue eyes as she takes in the breathtaking grandeur of the sacred grounds. Large bubbles explain that many visitors are praying today, hoping to receive a blessing during the princess's ceremony. A long-haired acolyte leads the way, explaining that Mother Asterica is eagerly awaiting the princess's arrival inside. Walking through the towering white arches, Alfaria thinks to herself about the incredible scale of the temple's architecture. High-angle view shows Alfaria following the acolyte along a path decorated with intricate dragon-themed symbols and carvings. A dark-haired woman in a flowered dress prays silently, specifically to witness the princess's special blessing ceremony. The acolyte gestures toward a grand entrance, announcing that the inner sanctuary is located just through these curtains. The acolyte explains that only blue-eyed, blonde-haired Imperial family members are permitted to enter this specific worship area. A mysterious figure in a deep A slender hand rests against a white and gold chest, signaling a moment of deep devotion or greeting. Mother Asterica is revealed, a beautiful woman with sparkling purple eyes and a regal, shimmering golden headpiece. A soft step sounds as Alfaria kneels, showing her deep reverence before the powerful high priestess of the temple. A glowing bubble auction begins, calling for Alfaria's future to be blessed with limitless happiness and divine protection. In a scene of quiet grace, the priestess stands over the kneeling princess as jewel, while Alfaria remains in prayer. Keeping her eyes closed, Alfaria offers her sincere thanks to Mother Asterica for the powerful and solemn blessing. A quick blink sounds as the ritual concludes, leaving the princess in a state of quiet, reflective peace. Asterica smiles warmly, asking the princess if she is tired before inviting her to talk privately in her chambers. A rhythmic thump sounds. Thump. Alfaria follows Asterica and her acolyte deeper into the temple's inner sanctum. Private conversation. Alfaria is left speechless and bewildered, her eyes wide as she processes the high priestess's shockingly casual demeanor. Asterica relaxes on the sofa, urging Alfaria to set aside formalities, while Liz and the princess stand completely stunned. Asterica admires a beautiful blue and black feather fan, discovering it was crafted from the dragon Cisellia's own feathers. With a playful wink and a laugh, the high priestess insists that the young princess simply call her Asterica. Alfaria admits her surprise, finding it difficult to reconcile Asterica's carefree attitude with her prestigious role as high priestess. A nervous sweat breaks out on Alfaria's face as the light-haired priestess casually offers her a beer for their talk. Asterica explains that she never chose this life and uses her mandatory single status to ignore the temple's strict rules. Narration reveals the harsh imperial law where only one princess marries while the others are forced into lifelong solitude. Asterica shocks Alfaria by claiming the dragon god doesn't exist, dismissively waving off the fear of any divine punishment. Resting her chin on her hand, Asterica watches the princess with a knowing, mischievous glint in her purple eyes. Alfaria maintains a serious expression, thinking that speaking so openly about doctrinal violations is a dangerous and sensitive topic. Asterica reassures the confused. Her high value to the Empire ensures her safety from any immediate threats. Looking over her wooden tankard, Asterica mentions a secret method the Imperial family uses to preserve their dragon bloodline. A decorative golden frame poses a question about House Amortot and its connection to the strongest dragon-blooded princesses. Dark silhouettes illustrate the various members of the high-ranking households involved in the Empire's complex social and political web. A detailed family tree explains how the Imperial family shifted from incestuous practices to creating House Amortat for healthier offspring. Despite the changes to their breeding practices, the text notes that certain side effects have persisted throughout the generations. Alfaria looks deeply unsettled while holding her drink, reflecting on the grim and dark history of her royal ancestors. A portrait depicts a nervous man named Brute, serving as a visual example of the bloodline's lingering physical complications. Asterica explains that despite these bloodline issues, a new individual with exceptionally strong dragon blood has suddenly emerged. Alfaria's eyes widen in shock as Asterica reveals that this powerful newcomer possesses no blood relation to the Imperial family. A close-up focuses on the intense, focused gaze of the High Priestess as she speaks of the mysterious new arrival. A chibi Alfaria looks annoyed and skeptical as Asterica discusses the tricky complications of potential marriages with the princess. A blonde-haired man is shown as Asterica explains the political impossibility of a marriage involving the currently wed crown prince. Marriage to Yevan is discussed as a move that would essentially proclaim him the next emperor, inviting massive opposition. Gripping her tankard, Alfaria laments the cold reality that even imperial princesses are treated as mere property for political gain. The conversation shifts to a man named Antarion, as Alfaria blinks in confusion, letting out a surprised, "Huh?" as she tries to keep up with the priestess's revelations. Resting her hands on her lap, Alfaria pauses as she struggles to find the right words for the situation. Asterica describes the man's inhuman indifference, noting that his cold personality makes him incredibly difficult for anyone to approach. A sharp clack sounds as Asterica sets down her tankard, refusing to divulge any more of the man's personal hardships. Long for affection, suggesting they might eventually become close friends. Alfaria offers a soft, stretching her arms behind her head, Asterica settles back into the sofa with a thoughtful and calm expression. The High Priestess stares into the distance, her regal profile highlighted by the soft light of her private sanctuary chambers. From a high-angle view, Alfaria asks to hear about Asterica's past life as a serf, and the priestess agrees. A gentle floral pattern fills the screen, marking a soft transition into the story of Asterica's humble beginnings. The scene shifts to the grand temple exterior at sunset, its white towers glowing under a vibrant orange and yellow sky. Alfaria thanks Asterica for opening up, touched by the priestess's willingness to share her deeply personal and painful history. Taking the priestess's hands in hers, Alfaria brings up the topic of Asterica's family and her worries for their well-being. Alfaria offers her help, promising to use her position to find out how Asterica's parents and brother are doing. A close-up of Alfaria's eye captures her startled reaction as she begins to speak about the priestess's request. A quick spring sounds as Alfaria stands up in shock, while Asterica reminds her of her vast influence as High Priestess. Asterica explains that the widespread temples act as an information hub, allowing her to gather data from across the empire. Before agreeing to the search, Asterica points a finger at Alfaria, demanding a single, solemn promise in return. Asterica makes the princess promise never to visit her family in person, regardless of what news they might find. Looking down at Alfaria, Asterica explains that a visit from an imperial princess would bring dangerous attention to a serf's home. Asterica reminds the faceless Alfaria of her immense status as a princess, an archduke's daughter, and a powerful dragon pact-maker. A heavy groan sounds as a chibi Alfaria reluctantly agrees to the promise, while a smiling Asterica looks satisfied. Asterica notes her brother's coldness, while Alfaria expresses her gratitude for the High Priestess's warmth. Her face flushed, Alfaria nervously considers the weight of her new royal responsibilities. Asterica asks to see Alfaria's archery skills during her upcoming visit to Hyacinth Castle. Liz cheekily defends their informal behavior as the High Priestess prepares for her departure. Night falls over the temple as white lilies bloom under a starlit indigo sky.
The sisters bid each other a fond farewell under the starlit sky outside the sanctuary.
Dressed in elegant blue florals, Asterica warmly invites Alfaria to visit her for company.
Alfaria asks if she can return the favor by hosting the high priestess at her own home. With a gentle smile, Alfaria invites Asterica to be the first official guest at Hyacinth Castle.
Rhythmic rattle and heavy clunk sounds echo as the Imperial carriage carries the princess back home. Bathed in a magical glow, Alfaria boards her carriage as the evening journey begins in earnest. Soft snowflakes begin to fall as Alfaria gazes out into the winter night with a solemn expression.
Watching the snow descend upon the palace, Alfaria realizes that winter has finally arrived in the Empire.
A sharp "Hiya" rings out as a wooden training sword cuts through the air with incredible speed. Panting from exertion, Alfaria focuses intently on her swordplay during a rigorous morning training session. Viscount Katzel Nimmer, the new instructor, praises the princess for her rapidly improving martial skills. Alfaria takes a moment to recover while Katzel prepares for the next phase of their training.
The veteran instructor announces that today's lesson will transition from physical combat to controlling magical energy. Katzel directs Alfaria's attention to a thick metal pole to demonstrate the power of magical imbuement. Drawing his blade, Katzel explains that physical strength alone cannot pierce such dense, enchanted metal.
With a powerful vroom and a clean slice, a magical strike cleaves the metal pole in two.
Alfaria watches in awe as Katzel explains how imbuing magic into a weapon creates devastating effects. Katzel notes that Alfaria's strong dragon blood will allow her to manifest magic instantly during battle. They discuss how mages use complex devices to compensate for their lack of natural, high-purity dragon blood. Narrative visuals illustrate how Imperial mages must store magic in their hearts, a slower and less efficient method. Katzel warns that Alfaria's heart would be destroyed if she attempted to cast spells like a mage. Determined to master her natural gift, she prepares to learn how to wield her innate magical power. Katzel explains that magic control is the art of releasing the energy stored within one's own body. Raising her wooden sword, the princess tries to focus her will and imbue the weapon with magic. A heavy, silent atmosphere fills the courtyard as Alfaria's first attempt results in absolutely no magical reaction. Katzel reassures her that practice is difficult and requires a unique, intuitive moment of spiritual enlightenment. Holding a small scrap of material, the instructor emphasizes that everyone finds their path to power differently. Silhouette visions show different warriors finding enlightenment through mental discipline or the grim reality of combat. Alfaria reflects on her teacher's words while standing amidst the quiet, falling snow of the training grounds. Refusing to be complacent, the blonde princess vows to give her training everything she has. The princess is startled out of her thoughts by a sudden, loud call from across the garden. Liz rushes in to announce that the royal guests have arrived, ending the day's training session abruptly. The arrival of Mother Asterica and Lord Antarion is announced as they enter the palace grounds. Formal portraits reveal Asterica and the tall, black-haired Antarion arriving in their finest imperial attire. Asterica joyfully dashes toward Alfaria, eager to begin their visit at the magnificent Hyacinth Castle. A sudden hug catches Alfaria by surprise as her affectionate sister clings to her with genuine warmth. Alfaria greets the stoic Antarion, who offers a polite but reserved welcome to the young princess. Chibi Asterica remains glued to her sister's side, while Antarion maintains his characteristically indifferent expression. Narrative text highlights Alfaria's growing discomfort as she tries to navigate the complex family dynamic. A rhythmic da-pun heartbeat accompanies the tense silence as the three royals sit down for tea. An awkward tension persists despite Asterica's cheerful attempts to make the family members bond quickly. Antarion dryly remarks that his war stories are likely only interesting to the eccentric high priestess. Alfaria's face pales as she wonders how someone as unrefined as Asterica holds such a sacred title. Happily munching on bread, Asterica explains that understanding military affairs is vital for all Imperial members. Antarion discusses the upcoming war, weighing the capabilities of Yevan against their brother Kyle's lack of experience. Asterica questions the Crown Prince's return during wartime, while Alfaria listens, distracted by mentions of delicious pastries. Setting down his tea with a sharp clack, Antarion agrees with Alfaria's assessment of the current military situation. Antarion explains how the enemy emperor retreated to the capital, leaving local armies to manage the front lines. The discussion continues as Antarion notes that the opposing ruler has only recently ascended to the imperial throne. Gazing at his tea,
Antarion describes the Heron Empire's internal instability following a devastating and prolonged civil war. Alfaria admits she had not considered these strategic details, viewing the complex conversation as a valuable learning experience. A light-hearted mood returns as Asterica hums a cheerful tune, leaning toward the focused and serious blonde princess. Antarion shifts the topic toward the upcoming winter hunt, suggesting they conclude their heavy discussion about the war. A comical vision shows a white dragon throwing a tantrum over military boredom, while Alfaria looks on sheepishly. Staring at the tea, Alfaria expects to participate in the hunt, but Asterica warns her that father won't allow it. Asterica explains that a public appearance would force Alfaria into a formal role that her father currently opposes. A cheerful flashback shows Alfaria's knight comrades surprising her with a cake to celebrate her 16th birthday during training. Looking over snowy peaks, Asterica describes how the hunting season banquets serve as vital networking events for regional nobles. Asterica explains that the hunt is a precursor to the New Year's ball, offering a chance for a debut. Resting her head on her hand, Asterica notes Alfaria's lack of interest in high society, despite her royal status. Surrounded by blue flowers, Asterica reminds Alfaria that as a master, she will always be the center of attention. Antarion stands up, suggesting the ball is the perfect stage for the princess to officially present herself to society. A close-up focuses on Alfaria's determined blue eye as she carefully weighs the heavy advice from her royal guests. Asterica reacts with playful suspicion to Antarion's sudden helpfulness, finding his proactive interest in Alfaria's social life quite unusual. Antarion mentions that helping Alfaria is what Cisellia wants, maintaining his typical calm and unreadable composure while holding tea. Asterica reflects on her own past as a hunter, emphasizing the deep responsibility she feels toward her former life. Alfaria blinks in confusion, struggling to grasp the hidden meaning behind Asterica's cryptic and philosophical words about identity. Preparing to leave, Asterica declines Alfaria's dinner invitation and delegates the remaining matters to the stoic Antarion. A soft whisper sounds as Asterica leans in close, sharing a final secret message with the surprised blonde princess. Handing over a sealed report, Asterica reveals she found Alfaria's family and warns her to read it in private. Asterica waves a cheerful, energetic goodbye while Antarion follows behind her with his usual silent and distant demeanor. Clutching the secret letter to her chest, Alfaria watches her guests depart as her maid waits in the background. Outside, Asterica mentions the snowy ride, finding Antarion's decision to help Alfaria attend the hunt entirely unexpected and strange. Asterica notes that taking such an active role in their sister's life is a significant change for the cold Antarion. Looking at the priestess, Antarion remains silent as she warns that his interference might upset their father's careful plans. Antarion admits the princess piqued Asterica to question why he is suddenly so curious about her. Antarion reveals his desire to see if a lowly, uneducated girl can truly adapt to the rigors of high society. The black-haired man believes that if Alfaria succeeds, it will bolster his own confidence in his difficult political work. Asterica scowls with disappointment, calling Antarion the worst for viewing their sister as nothing more than a social experiment. Crossing his arms, Antarion lets out a quiet breath as the carriage travels through the quiet, snow-covered city streets. A close-up of Antarion's cold blue gaze captures his internal reflection on his own ambitions and the path ahead. A haunting memory depicts a tall, cloaked figure leading a small boy through a lonely and frozen urban landscape. Antarion recalls a moment of struggle, watching coins fall and vowing never to be content with a life of mediocrity. Determined to achieve greatness, Antarion asserts his drive to keep pushing forward for as long as he is alive. Asterica watches her brother from across the carriage, questioning how he plans to reach such heights with his detachment. Antarion notes the dangers of excessive ambition, yet his cold expression suggests he is fully prepared for any outcome. An ethereal vision of a crowned Alfaria appears as Asterica considers suggesting her as the Empress and Yewan's wife. Antarion dismisses the idea, noting that Yewan lacks the proper rationale to ever be considered a candidate for emperor. Asterica firmly reminds the black-haired man that Alfaria is a person, not a chess piece to be used for politics. A shadowy silhouette serves as a warning that seeing others merely as tools will eventually lead to deep, inescapable regret. Standing alone in the library, Alfaria holds the letter as Antarion's thoughts declare himself just another tool for his goals. A heavy atmosphere fills the room as a warning describes the inevitable moment when Alfaria's emotions will become uncontrollable.
Alfaria begins reading the investigative report, which details the current whereabouts and status of Syria's family from Harper. The report grimly reveals that the head of the household died in battle, though his wife miraculously managed to survive. Turning the page, Alfaria learns that the eldest daughter, Syria, showed incredible bravery by killing 2 enemy knights in combat. Reading the report, Alfaria learns of a woman who vanished into a river during a castle's demolition. The report concludes with the discovery of a surviving son, leaving Alfaria visibly shaken by the tragic details. Overwhelmed by the newfound variables, Alfaria collapses on the library floor as her heart weighs heavy with worry. The grim report reveals the surviving son now cares for his injured mother, who was left with a limp. Gazing over the castle, Alfaria realizes Antarion successfully convinced their father to let her attend the winter hunt. Traveling toward Antith Castle, Alfaria stops by the Krezel Margravate to pay her respects to local nobility. A massive, sudden stomp sounds as the white dragon's powerful claws make landfall, signaling the princess's grand arrival. Draped in a regal red cloak, Alfaria dismounts her dragon as the local lord greets her with deep reverence. Lord Antith welcomes the princess after 4 months, while Alfaria graciously hopes her visit isn't too much trouble. Lord Antith invites her inside for a feast, and Alfaria kindly asks for her dragon, Sizz, to be fed. Seated comfortably inside, Alfaria laughs while explaining that Cisellia's speed made her long journey quite pleasant and quick. During the formal dinner, Alfaria expresses her sincere gratitude to Lord Antith for his hospitality and continued concern. A sharp clack echoes as Alfaria cuts into her steak, the sound punctuating her transition into more serious matters. Setting her focus, the princess shifts the conversation toward the deeper alliance she seeks with the lord's noble family. Alfaria asks Lord Antith if he is still willing to help her family as they previously discussed in private. Maintaining her composure, the princess reveals there is one specific crucial task she requires the lord to handle immediately. With a chilling focus, Alfaria admits she suspects her own chamberlain and head maid of stealing from her treasury. Alfaria recalls Antarion's visit to Hyacinth Castle a few days ago, where he asked to speak with her privately. In the flashback, a humming Esterica relaxes while Antarion prepares to reveal a dark truth about the castle's staff. Antarion reveals that Baron Axel Rosen, the chamberlain, has been embezzling territorial funds to support a lavish, hidden lifestyle. Back in the present, Alfaria is flash with indignation as she processes the betrayal of her trusted household staff. Slicing her food, Alfaria explains her investigation into the ledgers and her desperate need for a truly trustworthy manager. Lord Antith listens intently, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and the necessity of securing the princess's royal finances. The lord warns that helping her in the capital is expensive, especially since her 16th birthday went largely uncelebrated. Alfaria admits her prior complacency, but asserts that she can no longer ignore the welfare of her loyal subjects. Standing with renewed purpose, the princess vows to take action, while her brown-haired maid watches with a worried expression. A soft swish sounds as Alfaria leads Lord Antith through the hall, her movements now filled with regal authority. Taking up a bow, Alfaria instructs the surprised lord to simply watch as she demonstrates her newfound, unwavering resolve. A rhythmic stretch sounds as Alfaria draws her bow, noting that the ball after the hunt is her stage. A sharp whish sounds as Alfaria releases an arrow, declaring her intention to be the center of all attention. A violent snap sounds as the arrow strikes true, perfectly shattering its target and proving her lethal, calculated precision. Lord Antith stands stunned by her skill, as Alfaria offers a light-hearted smile, her point having been clearly made. Deeply impressed, the lord asks for forgiveness for his earlier doubts and pledges to follow the princess's future advice. Watching her, Lord Antith considers her far superior to the crown prince due to her consideration and emotional control. The lord suggests his eldest daughter Lean Tapaza as the perfect candidate to manage the castle's complex finances. Walking away, Alfaria firmly declares that she must make an example of the treacherous chamberlain to maintain her authority. A heavy clench sounds as Alfaria tightens her fist, resolved to set things straight at her long-neglected Hyacinth Castle. Surrounded by spectral chains, Alfaria's internal monologue warns that she is prepared to personally punish those who betray her. Lying among flowers, Alfaria reflects on the fragile nature of her life and the constant threats she must face. Alfaria thanks Lord Antith for his shelter as she prepares to depart, promising to maintain more secure future communications. Sizz takes to the sky, carrying the princess over the lush green forests as the evening sun begins to set. Looking into the dragon's intelligent eye, Alfaria checks in with Cisellia as they continue their journey through the clouds.
Soaring high, Alfaria decides to make a detour to Harper to investigate the surviving members of her lost family.
Alfaria acknowledges the secrecy of her past, but admits a deep, painful longing to see her kin from above. Sizz observes the princess, noting how she avoided her guards to pursue this personal mission without any other choice. From the ground, a pair of villagers gasp as they witness the majestic white dragon flying through the sunset. People stare in awe as white feathers fall like snow, wondering what a sacred being is doing so far. Looking down at the village, Alfaria's heart aches with a quiet wish to meet her family face to face. With a grim set to her mouth, the princess confirms her resolve to keep her distance for their safety. The scene shifts to the ancient, snowy peaks that watched over the continent long before humans ever claimed the land. Legends tell of an ancient war between the demon god Harasita and the dragon god Elianrod. Their magic transformed the continent's center into the treacherous and monster-infested territory known as the Dark Forest. Every winter, the Elian Empire hunts these monsters to display the Emperor's power as the realm's protector. Arriving at the Krezel Margravat, the blonde-haired Princess Alfaria observes the bustling preparations for the upcoming hunt. Alfaria notes the temporary lodgings for dragons while her companion looks on with a curious, attentive expression. Smiling, Alfaria dismisses the idea of special treatment, preferring to stay within the castle's humble, ordinary rooms. A sharp command sounds as Alfaria turns toward the horizon, her expression hardening as she assumes her duties. From above, the purple dragon glides over the massive encampment where Emperor Adarian III has finally arrived. A close-up reveals the Emperor's stern face, marked by a scar and a cold, calculating gaze. The Emperor surveys the crowd, spotting the princess standing among the common people as the celebrations begin. Alfaria feels the weight of the Emperor's oppressive attention, her expression turning wary as she anticipates their meeting. A guard's voice rings out, announcing the official arrival of His Majesty and the third Imperial Princess. Clamor and murmurs erupt as the Emperor and Alfaria make their grand entrance before the bowing nobility. While the Emperor laughs and mingles with the guests, a masked Alfaria sighs with boredom and detachment. Holding her wine, Alfaria laments how these repetitive social obligations have consumed her schedule for several days. The blonde-haired princess reflects on her hollow role, feeling like a mere doll filling the Empress's empty seat. A soft sigh escapes her as she crosses her arms, clearly exhausted by the endless festive performances. A loud thud sounds as a man in a red cloak lands heavily before the princess's surprised gaze. In a comical flashback, the Emperor hugs a shocked Alfaria while complaining about their lack of quality time. Back in reality, Alfaria forces a cordial smile despite her internal frustration with the Emperor's public posturing. Wanting the hunt to begin, Alfaria pours wine while the Emperor prepares to introduce a distinguished knight. The blonde-haired princess is startled to hear the name of Beatrice Aquitaine, a legendary figure among the knights. Narrative text identifies Beatrice as the trailblazing and sole female knight within the Empire's elite Fourth Order. Standing proudly amidst blooming flowers, the dark-skinned, gray-haired Beatrice salutes her emperor with unwavering military discipline. The Emperor entrusts Beatrice to mentor Alfaria, trusting the senior knight to guide his daughter during the hunt. Alfaria warmly invites Beatrice to Hyacinth Castle, hoping to establish a friendly connection with her stoic new mentor. Beatrice remains silent and cold, her stern demeanor contrasting sharply with the princess's eager and friendly approach. A quick whip sounds as Beatrice turns her back on the princess, abruptly ending their brief conversation. Alfaria watches her go, bewildered and stung by the knight's sudden and blatant display of social distance. The scene transitions as a pointing finger questions whether Alfaria has committed an unseen error in her behavior. Looking troubled, the brown-haired man in military uniform crosses his arms as he discusses the scouting mission. He explains that the Emperor has ordered the strongest dragon to scout the dangerous Dark Forest immediately. Alfaria feels cornered as the Emperor demands she remember her origins and his authority over her future. Ignoring her protests, the Emperor decrees that Dame Beatrice must accompany the princess on her high-risk mission. A gray-haired man laughs while wishing the princess well as she prepares to depart for the forest. Beatrice Aquitaine looks back with a sharp, determined gaze as the princess calls out to her in the stable. The gray-haired knight introduces herself and her mount, confirming her role as the princess's escort for the mission. Alfaria looks visibly nervous, her sweat-beaded face revealing her deep anxiety about working with such a cold partner. The princess wonders if Beatrice is genuinely uncomfortable or simply hostile while the white dragon observes their interaction. Turning back, Beatrice addresses the princess with a stern expression that leaves no room for casual, friendly talk. The gray-haired knight bluntly rejects, stating she only wishes to maintain a professional working relationship. Alfaria questions if the knight dislikes her, but Beatrice remains indifferent, allowing the princess to draw her own conclusions. Beatrice explains the harsh reality of her life, where marriage prospects are sacrificed for the duty of knighthood. With a piercing look, Beatrice points out that Alfaria's status as a knight is purely a result of birth. A low growl sounds as Cisellia bristles at the insult, forcing Alfaria to restrain her protective dragon. Mounting her winged companion, Beatrice prepares to lead the scouting party, ignoring the princess's lingering look of hurt. Beatrice acknowledges the official nature of their mission, focused entirely on the duty at hand rather than friendship. Alfaria climbs into her saddle. The two dragons take flight, soaring over the vast, snow-dusted woods toward the heart of the dark forest. In a comedic moment, Sizz suggests a lethal solution for the night, leaving Alfaria shocked by his vocabulary. Riding ahead, Beatrice coldly decides she owes no sensitivity to the princess's personal feelings or motives. Alfaria pauses as the journey continues, her expression flickering with a brief moment of quiet uncertainty. Cisellia soars over the dark forest, where Alfaria observes the strange, shifting colors of the ancient trees. A low doom sounds as Sizz warns that the forest monsters will strike if their young are disturbed. Alfaria asks if other dragons dwell nearby, but Sizz notes they stay far within the distant mountains. A sudden, sharp realization strikes the dragon, his eyes widening as he senses something unsettling in the woods. Alfaria spots a bloodied creature on the forest floor and looks down with a startled gasp. Seeing the dead mother monster lying in its own blood, Alfaria urgently commands Sizz to descend immediately. A quick jump sounds as the princess leaps from her dragon's back. Examining the scene, Alfaria realizes the mother died protecting her young several days ago while Beatrice watches silently. Spotting a massive paw print, Alfaria decides to track the predator using the skills she was previously taught. Measuring the enormous track with her hand, Alfaria realizes they are hunting a creature of truly terrifying proportions. Sizz warns that demons larger than himself exist in these woods, strong enough to crush them with ease. Beatrice insists they find the beast immediately, as its presence makes the upcoming Imperial hunt far too dangerous. Wary of the risk, Alfaria suggests sticking to their scouting mission rather than approaching such a lethal threat. A heavy rumble sounds as Beatrice stands firm, asserting her unwavering commitment to her duties as a knight. Turning toward the princess, the gray-haired knight sharply demands that Alfaria approach her tasks with more vigor. Beatrice warns that faltering over trivialities will eventually cost the princess her position and the respect of others. A quick turn sounds as Beatrice abruptly leaves, ignoring Alfaria's attempt to call her back. A sudden whish sounds as Beatrice flies away, leaving the princess reaching out in a futile attempt to stop her. A soft whish sounds as Beatrice disappears into the clouds, much to the princess's frustration and the dragon's confusion. Sizz asks for their next move while Alfaria stares after the knight, her patience finally reaching its limit. Glaring toward the horizon, the blonde-haired princess hardens her gaze as she prepares to take matters into her own hands. In a flashback, Beatrice recalls hearing gossip about female knights resigning for marriage, feeling a deep, quiet resentment. The gray-haired knight reflects on the struggle of female knights who rarely survive outside of ceremonial roles. Beatrice remembers standing before the nobility, determined to hold the position she worked so hard to achieve. Her internal monologue reveals a desperate need to elevate the pride of all female knights through her own perfection. Beatrice admits she feared the princess's perceived incompetence would jeopardize everything women had sacrificed to build. Looking at Alfaria, Beatrice realizes she chose to dislike the princess long before they had ever even met. A close-up of the knight's wide eye reveals her sudden, horrifying realization of her own misguided arrogance. Beatrice admits to herself that she wasn't actually protecting her pride, but was instead blinded by her own ego. As a massive black panther looms over her, Beatrice realizes she was intoxicated by her own self-obsession.
A sudden whoosh sounds as Alfaria dives in on Sizz, commanding the dragon to prepare his lethal breath attack. A rhythmic creak sounds as Alfaria draws her bow, furious that Beatrice's recklessness is endangering their mission. A violent roar sounds as Alfaria's arrow strikes the monster's eye, blinding the beast with lethal accuracy. Calling out to her dragon, Alfaria prepares for a final strike to end the threat once and for all. Cisellia stands ready, the dragon's power surging as he prepares to unleash a devastating blast upon the predator. A massive wave of light consumes the panther, the dragon's breath obliterating the monster in a single, blinding flash. A heavy step sounds as Alfaria lands near the trembling Beatrice, the immediate danger finally having passed. Looking up with a shattered expression, the proud knight offers a sincere and humble apology to the princess. Bowing her head in deep shame, Beatrice apologizes to everyone for her arrogance and nearly fatal mistakes. The knight reflects on how her obsession with status caused her to forget what was truly important. The scene shifts back to the palace, where the sparkling lights of a grand celebration fill the hall. Surrounded by flowers, Alfaria stares into her wine, her thoughts still lingering on the intensity of the hunt. A concerned voice notes her somber mood, pulling the princess back from her deep, quiet introspection. Antarian stands before her in his regal uniform, his presence commanding attention as someone calls his name. Alfaria greets Antarian, who explains his late arrival was due to managing the hunt's complex administrative tasks. Antarian gently presses the princess, asking why she wore such a troubled expression when he first spotted her. Forcing a small, weary smile, Alfaria takes a sip of wine while trying to hide her internal exhaustion. Nearby, the brown-haired knight looks completely overwhelmed and drained by the endless, exhausting demands of the event. Beatrice looks down in silent shame while Elton silent as is heard during the somber sunset debriefing at the camp. The red-haired commander lectured Pirup, recounting how the princess safely night despite the mission's intentional intent. Explicit orders. A heavy doom sounds as the commander points out the irony of the princess protecting her intensely elite mentor instead. With a grave expression, she is informed bans her treacherous from injuries in hunt due to her dragon's sustained upcomings. Beatrice accepts the light penalty, grateful her previous diligence saved her from an immediate and total dismissal. Word with unwavering discipline. Amidst the palace lights, Alfaria swirls her wine, noting that news of the incident has already begun spreading. Raising her glass, the blonde-haired princess resolves to remain unfazed by the growing whispers and social frustration. Spotting a new guest, Alfaria asks Antarian for an introduction to the silver-haired man standing across the hall. Antarian identifies the man as Count Aquitaine, a former cavalry commander and the father of Dame Beatrice. Count Aquitaine offers a polite, knowing smile as he observes the princess from across the grand, festive hall. Alfaria understands Beatrice's aspirations better upon seeing her father, who lets out a hearty and friendly grin. Alfaria and the Count host with respectful tone while haired Antarian observes the interaction with a quiet, stoic face. Watching through his works on the conflict reflects on the friction between Alfaria and is handled during with poise. Through the distortion of a wineglass, the princess appears to navigate the social scene with newfound, quiet confidence. Antarian wonders if her noble nature is truly inherent or simply a product of her high-ranking royal blood. Antarian decides to put Alfaria's unique traits to use, calling out to her as she enjoys the party. Approaching with a calm demeanor, the blue-haired man asks if her conversation with the Count was at all pleasant. Alfaria explains that her frustration stems from his daughter, though the Count himself remains a polite and professional noble. Surrounded by sparkling jewelry, Antarian encourages her to accept the Count's ultimately as a bending form of apology. The two walk together through the opulent hall, their presence drawing the attention of the surrounding, whispering court members. Pausing, Alfaria mentions that the advice Antarian gave her at Hyacinth Castle has proven to be quite helpful. Surrounded by lush white flowers, the princess offers a sincere thank you to the black-haired man for his guidance. Antarian remains silent for the princess's unexpected and genuine show of gratitude. Under the glow of a full moon, the blue-haired man invites the princess outside for a brief moment of air. As they walk, Antarian questions why she would seek the winter cold in the middle of a social event. Winter. Antarian suggests judgment cold's eases of the coldity can be far more agonizing than the winter air itself. Alfaria reveals that the walk was her idea, as she sought a private moment to speak with him directly. They enter a quiet, blue-lit conservatory as the blue-haired man begins to lead the conversation toward a new topic. A sudden, sharp halt sounds stop Intrigue, the atmosphere growing heavy with unsaid, brewing tension. Facing her directly, Antith addresses the princess by name, his expression unreadable in the deep shadows of the conservatory. Against a backdrop of Imperial Cisellia, Antith asks a shocking question. Has she thrown and become the empress? Alfaria is taken aback, questioning his motives and stating she knows her place is far beneath such high ambitions. Antith leans in, bluntly stating that Alfaria is far better suited for the throne than his own sister-in-law. Startled and blushing, Alfaria protests that she cannot marry the emperor, a man she has never even met. Concerns, emphasizing that becoming the woman with the highest authority is the only priority. With a nervous sweat, Alfaria asks if his previous help political scheme the real reason he has been helping her. Antith stands tall and silent, the blue moonlight highlighting his sharp features as the tension between them peaks. Reflecting in a dark hue, ulterior motives, Antith to his mind flashes back to a brown-haired deep from his past. Ulterior motives. Reeling from his cold logic, Alfia accuses the man of nature from her like a mere friendly for his plans. The princess notes with a hurt expression that it feels as though he is simply treating her like a tool. Looking down at his hand, Antith calmly concedes that she might be right about his utilitarian view of others. He explains his cold philosophy, viewing everyone within the empire as nothing more than essential keepsakes in a machine. Proposing a formal alliance, Antith leaving the princess confused by his sudden and blunt revelation conversational tone. Bristling at the comparison, Alfaria firmly states that she does not use people as tools to achieve her goal. As Antith smiles broadly, dismissively telling the princess that her idealistic view of the situation is not the truth. A memory of a somber woman surfaces, highlighting the heavy burden of being a lone survivor in a ruthless world. Skeletal hands covered in stark blood appear in a haunting vision, hinting at a past filled with violent, quiet loss. A lone figure walks toward a distant castle, alongside a vow to live only to remember someone lost. The scene fades into a textured darkness, leaving the princess's future and her alliance with Antith completely uncertain. Amidst a field of bones, Alfaria reflects on her responsibility and the persistent holes in her reasoning. The scene shifts to the bright, open sky over the sprawling tents of the Imperial hunting camp. Antith explains the precious resources of the dark forest to Alfaria as merchants gather for the hunt. Alfaria remains silent while the black-haired man describes the high value of fire-resistant timber and demon materials. Viewed from above, Alfaria notes how composed Antith appears despite their awkward conversation the previous day. Watching him closely, the is capable of feeling any genuine emotion at all. Deciding to act as if nothing happened, Alfaria prepares to mount her horse as the mission begins. Steeled for the hunt, Alfaria sits tall on her horse, ready to face the dangers of the forest. A thunderous cheer erupts as the winter demon hunt officially commences amidst the Imperial tents and knights. From the royal platform, a leader luck as they prepare to enter the dark woods. A powerful whoosh sounds as dragons dive from the sky to lure out a massive, shadowy demon. Aerial forces coordinate their attacks, proving that even the strongest ground demons cannot withstand dragons from above. Narration warns that the ruthless rules of the jungle can shift unpredictably within the depths of the forest. Alfaria observes the small demons in the sky, noting the heavy burden placed upon the dragon knights. A sharp pierce echoes as Alfaria expertly strikes down a flying demon with a single, precise arrow. Nearby soldiers are amazed by the blonde princess's marksmanship, recognizing her as an expert with the bow. Soaring on her white dragon, Alfaria commands Syria to cover her rear while she targets the enemies ahead. Framed by a golden border, the blonde princess draws her bow with lethal confidence and perfect aim. Overlooking a gruesome defeat, Alfaria finds relief that the cold weather masks the stench of the dead creature. Alfaria examines a fanged demonic deer with curiosity, while a soldier calls out to her in excitement. A brown-haired soldier praises her outstanding performance, asking if she will bring her prize to Hyacinth Castle. In a comedic moment, the tiny white dragon Syria hauls a massive, dead bear through the clouds. Alfaria offers a nervous, sweat-dropped smile as the soldier marvels at the immense value of her prize. Highlighting the economic reality, the soldier notes that a bearskin of that size is practically priceless. Alfaria consults with her dragon, who suggests they skip the skinning process and simply eat the meat. Shocking her companions, Alfaria draws a sharp knife, ready to field dress the massive kill herself. A flustered soldier quickly intervenes, begging the blonde princess to leave the messy task to professional hunters. Blushing with embarrassment, Alfaria realizes her practical survival instincts were far too extreme for her royal status. The blonde princess awkwardly holds the skin while the soldier looks on, baffled by her unexpected behavior. In a playful conversation, the group jokes about the dragon Syria wanting to eat the creature's innards. The scene transitions to the clear sky above the castle walls as evening approaches the camp. Alfaria is amazed by the lavish banquet prepared in the middle of nowhere for the hunting party. Standing tall in her uniform, the blonde princess prepares to join the high-ranking nobles for dinner. During the meal, Alfaria credits her dragon's success, but Antarion insists the master shares in the glory. A brown-haired man sits between them, sweating profusely as he feels the intense tension at the table. Leaning in, Antarion advises Alfaria to focus on replenishing her energy for the difficult path ahead.
Antarion warns of an even more difficult environment where they might encounter a rare and dangerous Yavuz dragon.
Alfaria reflects on the rarity of these creatures, noting that the First Order only possesses 2 of them. A silhouette of the Yavuz dragon illustrates its formidable steel claws and scales used for attack and defense. Antarion explains that capture is mandatory, despite the creature's reputation for being violent and nearly impossible to handle. The black-haired man notes the Empire's inability to breed them, as both remaining Yavuzes are male. Looking troubled, Alfaria worries that subduing such a powerful beast is far easier said than done. Internally, Alfaria questions if Antarion's concern is merely a calculated step toward making her the next empress. A sudden, sharp stand sounds as Antarion rises from the banquet table, surprising the blonde princess. Approaching her directly, the black-haired man invites the princess for a short stroll to speak privately. A heavy silence lingers as the two sit together on a wooden bench under the open sky. Alfaria looks on with a troubled face, wondering when they will finally overcome the awkwardness between them. Breaking the silence, Antarion looks away while admitting that he holds the blonde princess in high regard. Antarion reflects on his past decisions, maintaining that his calculating actions were the best possible outcome. Overwhelmed by his unexpected praise, the blonde princess turns her head away, her face flushing deep red. Sitting alone on a bench, the blonde princess struggles to define herself against Antarion's calculating worldview. Reflecting on their earlier walk, Alfaria decides she has never truly viewed herself as a mere political tool. A nervous fidget sounds as Antarion unexpectedly begins to open up about the tragic loss of his older brother. Antarion explains how witnessing death at a young age made him realize the insignificance of individual lives. He looks at the princess with a faint, rare smile, finding a strange kinship in her self-sacrificing nature. Discussing the necessity of power, the two reflect on the heavy burdens they carry to ensure their survival. A sudden, looming doom sounds as Antarion quips about the compassionate nature of the current emperor. Well, nothing says compassionate like a giant shadow of impending judgment. Antarion reveals his status as an illegitimate child, explaining the political precariousness surrounding the current throne and Kyle. Listening intently, Alfaria finally understands the true depth of Antarion's obsession with the powerful guardian dragons. Leaning forward, Antarion admits his drive for authority stems from a desperate wish to avoid a violent death. Framed by white blooms, Antarion's calm exterior masks the deep-seated motivations driving his alliance with the princess. Antarion compares Alfaria's nature to a dragon, admiring the free-spirited energy she brings to their calculated partnership. The princess is momentarily stunned as Antarion urges her to stop doubting her own worth and capabilities. Swallowing her lingering hesitation, Alfaria offers a soft acknowledgement, tentatively accepting his rare words of personal encouragement. The atmosphere shifts as Emperor's arrival is announced, prompting reflections on the heavy burden of being a survivor. The sound of steady footsteps echoes as Prince Scene transitions, marking the start of a new, bright to certain chapter. Walking away from the encounter, Alfaria carries the weight of Antarion's revelations into the challenges of the future. A playful transition introduces Dragon Syria prepares for mealtime amidst the clouds above the hunting camp. A focused, intense stare sounds as the hungry dragons lock eyes with a succulent piece of roasted meat. Recalling past annoyances, the white dragon Syria allows the emperor to feed her, though she maintains her pride. A green-scaled dragon approaches a smaller red companion, initiating a conversation over the highly coveted forest spoils. The green dragon generously offers the meat, prompting an excited reaction from the hungry, red-scaled beast. A satisfied munch and gulp sound as the red dragon happily devours the meal, while Syria watches nearby. Looking superior, the Emperor Guardian Dragon, Calgadon, questions why anyone would share food with beasts that cannot talk. Flustered, the large dragon Calgadon barks at Syria, asserting his high status as the carrier of the Imperial seat. Softening his tone, the majestic white dragon admits that he actually enjoys being treated with kindness and respect. Syria offers a portion of the meat to Calgadon, signaling a rare moment of camaraderie between the dragons. A joyful ha-ha sounds as Calgadon's white dragon as the is shedding between the two creatures near to the shared meal. Waving happily, the blonde princess calls out to her dragon Syria, who chirps back with an affectionate response. Alfaria shares the good news that the camp is buzzing with praise for the delicious meat they hunted. Syria looks incredibly pleased with herself, radiating a bright energy as she confirms she enjoyed the hunt too. A happy aha sounds as the scene fades, leaving the dragons and their partners in a moment of peace. Of everyone else. 2 days pass without event as dragons soar over the towering pine trees of the demon-infested forest. Taking advantage of the lull in monster activity, the Imperial Knights take a moment to rest and converse. A sudden low growl sounds. A thunderous roar sounds as a massive Yavuz dragon emerges in the Iron Ore lands, signaling imminent danger. Recalling Antarian's earlier warnings, Alfaria prepares herself for the difficult task of capturing the violent, rare creature. The brown-haired knight rushes toward Alfaria, relieved to have found her as they prepare for the imminent capture. A metallic clank sounds as a heavy golden chain is revealed, designed specifically to subdue the powerful Yavuz. The brown-haired man presents the gold mana of the explaining its superior strength compared to standard hunting tools. Looking at the massive silhouette, the princess notes how this gold restraint is far superior to any she's seen. A chibi-style brown-haired knight explains that standard muzzles are useless against the incredible physical strength of a Yavuz. Antarian and another knight handle the massive chain, while Alfaria realizes their team is expanding for this mission. Alfaria agrees that a larger team is necessary, acknowledging that 2 people alone cannot hope to capture a Yavuz. The tall, gray-haired knight stands with his back to the princess, his presence marking him as a veteran. A crisp sounds as the gray-haired knight greeting the princess acknowledges the princess's old, disciplined demeanor. Alfaria offers a polite greeting, officially meeting the legendary and stoic dragon knight known as Sir Jed. A heavy silence sounds as the 3 stand together, the atmosphere thick with professional tension and unspoken caution. For input on the plan, Sir Jed offers a blunt refusal, sparking an angry outburst. Peleside laughs as he explains Sir Jed's Knight of Silence nickname to the flustered blonde princess. The brown-haired knight notes Sir Jed's cold behavior towards Alfaria is making the royal atmosphere incredibly uncomfortable. Against a cloudy sky, the team focuses on their high-stakes mission, hoping for a bit of luck. High above the forest, Alfaria and Syria spot the silhouette. Alfaria asks her white dragon if she has ever engaged in combat with a rare Yavuz dragon before. Syria explains that these creatures typically avoid her kind, making direct encounters rare for the ancient white dragon. Ever the optimist, Alfaria wonders if they could simply resolve the conflict through a peaceful conversation instead. Syria responds with a skeptical sound as they bank through the clouds, preparing for the inevitable confrontation ahead. Accepting the reality of the situation, the dragon begins her descent toward the Iron Ore lands below. A heavy, bone-jarring stomp sounds as a massive creature lands, signaling the start of the dangerous hunt. Alfaria grips her reins tight, her face pale with shock as the sheer scale of the threat becomes clear. A low, menacing growl sounds from the trees as the dark dragon reveals itself to the royal party. A thunderous, ground-shaking roar sounds as the Yavuz dragon emerges, its presence confirmed by a nearby soldier. Syria evaluates the beast's immense strength, noting they must capture it alive without using her lethal breath. Sir Peliset shouts a warning against using dragon breath as he prepares his own mount for a direct attack. Wearing a confident smirk, the brown-haired man calls out to his own companion, Zeograt, to initiate the engagement. A small, agile dragon streaks through the air with incredible speed, serving as a distraction for the larger beast. A sudden, blinding zap sounds as lightning strikes the battlefield, surprising the knights with its unexpected elemental fury. A quick, sharp swish sounds as Syria dives, thanking the distraction for providing an opening to strike. Focused and determined, Alfaria prepares to deploy the heavy golden mana restraints to bind the violent creature. Realizing the Yavuz is watching, Alfaria aims carefully, knowing she only has one chance to secure the chains. The golden chains snap shut around the beast's neck as Alfaria cries out in triumph over the capture. Syria looks back at her master with a look of extreme concern, catching the blonde princess off guard. The dragon's expression shifts to one of comic dread, warning that peaceful negotiations are officially off the table. A sudden, powerful whoosh sounds as a whirlwind erupts, catching Alfaria by surprise mid-flight. Alfaria watches in awe as a massive vortex of wind magic surrounds the target, paralyzing it in place. The gray-haired Sir Jed looks on as his dragon, Shankarel, unleashes its unique ability to support the mission. A nearby voice urges the princess to prepare for the final binding as the dragon is successfully restrained. The team aims to capture the beast alive, ensuring a future pact can be formed with an Imperial knight. Tension spikes as the Yavuz regains consciousness, turning its predatory gaze toward the unsuspecting Sir Pelesidek. A hand yanks the reins as a desperate warning sounds, identifying the dragon's feigned injury as a trap. A heavy, foreboding da-dun sounds as the dragon's shadow looms over Peliset, marking his imminent peril. Narrated text over an ancient book warns that a Yavuz's physical might far exceeds any human limits. Peleside looks on with grim focus while the narration cautions never to let the beast fly above you. The strategic advantage becomes clear as the narrator explains why the Yavuz always seeks the highest altitude. The dark dragon folds its wings, initiating a high-speed dive that turns its massive body into a weapon. Using its incredible weight, the creature falls faster than any other dragon to crush its target below. The shadow of defeat falls over the battlefield as the predator prepares to crush the life from its prey. A panicked swish sounds as Alfaria screams for Peliset, watching the catastrophe unfold from above. Thinking quickly, the blonde princess orders Sir Jed to buy them time while she prepares a counterattack. Sir Jed hesitates in surprise while Alfaria draws her bow, determined to save her comrade at any cost. A rhythmic clink and clank sound as Alfaria's arrows bounce harmlessly off the dragon's indestructible steel scales. Riding hard, the blonde princess calls out to Syria, preparing for a more direct and dangerous maneuver. From his vulnerable position, Peliset prepares to take a desperate swing at the descending monster. Syria surges forward, her white wings glowing with intense blue mana as she intercepts the falling beast. Alfaria commands her dragon to throw the massive creature down, using their combined strength to shift the tide. In a comedic shift, the group recovers as Alfaria checks on the ruffled but alive brown-haired knight. A sharp groan sounds as the Yavuz is finally pinned to the ground by the heavy golden chains. A triumphant whoosh sounds as Syria circles above, looking down at their successful, if messy, capture. Alfaria looks on as Peliset confirms the mana restraints are working, leaving the rare dragon unable to fight. Peliset doubts their ability to capture the beast alive, noting Zeograt's thunderous attack is limited to 2 strikes. A quick, sharp whish sounds as the blonde princess maneuvers through the sky during the intense aerial engagement. Alfaria notices a sudden shift in the atmosphere as a white dragon silhouette glides high above the clouds. A magical surge confirms that the swirling winds are the work of Shankarel, the dragon belonging to Peliset. The massive dark dragon looms over Sir Jed as the gray-haired knight remains focused on the dangerous task. Peliset screams a desperate warning to Sir Jed as the predatory Yavuz positions itself for a lethal strike. A thunderous, ground-shaking kaboom sounds as a concentrated blast of blue mana strikes the target with incredible force. Alfaria recognizes the controlling magic, recalling lessons from her instructor while she watches the battle unfold with shock. Sweat beads on Alfaria's face as she wonders how Sir Jed possesses the bloodline required for such magic. Refocusing on the mission, the blonde princess calls for Syria to intervene before the situation spirals out of control. Someone shouts to finish the mission as the dark dragon continues its frantic struggle against the Imperial forces. A heavy, bone-jarring slam sounds as the white dragon tackles the Yavuz mid-air, pinning it toward the earth. Looking down at the pinned creature, Syria's cold gaze makes it clear that her patience has finally reached its limit. The white dragon asserts her dominance, claiming she has no reason to keep the beast alive like the humans. Looming over the dark dragon, Syria advises it to settle down and choose survival over a futile struggle. A terrified, stuttering sound escapes the corner of the frame as the outmatched Yavuz trembles before the ancient dragon. The silhouettes of the dragons glide back toward the campsite as the chaotic skirmish finally comes to an end.
Syria looks satisfied, though Alfaria suspects the two dragons shared a rather suspicious private conversation during the capture. Alfaria thanks the knights for their help, feeling a bit embarrassed about her earlier, more aggressive capture strategy.
Pelesset holds the heavy restraints, agreeing that keeping them on the dragon is no longer a safe option. Watching the shackles, Alfaria remembers Syria's hatred for such items when the two of them were first reunited. The princess looks directly at the Yavuz, asking if it can understand her, prompting a bewildered expression. The brown-haired Pelesset and the gray-haired Sir Jed stand together in quiet contemplation under the darkening sunset. Pelesset's face contorts into a shocked expression as he reacts to the princess's sudden and unexpected command. The brown-haired soldier protests, questioning why she would release such a rare and hard-fought prize back into the wild. Syria and the dark dragon lock eyes, communicating silently while a series of chirps sound between the two. Syria assures the princess that the Yavuz will be loyal and cause no trouble if it is treated kindly. A hand reaches out tentatively as a soft light glows, marking the beginning of a new and unlikely bond. Alfaria smiles warmly, promising that the dragon will grow stronger and wiser after consuming her own royal dragon blood. Pelesset watches from a distance, amazed that the princess bonded with a Yavuz without needing a formal mana pact. Turning to Sir Jed, Pelesset asks if the Stoic Knight remembers the Empire's ancient and mysterious founding myth. Sir Jed stares ahead with cold indifference, warning Pelesset that such dangerous topics should never be discussed aloud. Set against a decorative backdrop, Alfaria reflects on the danger of the rumors, realizing they must hold some truth. Alfaria kneels before the dark dragon, gently reaching out to it as they settle into the camp for the night. A rhythmic clamor and murmur sound from the soldiers as they watch Alfaria praise the captured beast's good behavior. Pelesset laughs, noting the noise from the camp, while Alfaria uses borrowed tweezers to tend to the dragon. Pelesset admits it is extremely rare to bring a wild dragon back without knocking it into a deep slumber. The brown-haired knight's expression shifts to a smirk as he notices a powerful presence approaching their temporary campsite. The group looks toward the horizon as the narrator announces the arrival of the Emperor under the blood-red sunset. A heavy, foreboding da-dun sounds as Alfaria turns to face the Emperor, who stands in his red cloak. The princess studies the Emperor's troubled face, wondering if he is afraid and what could possibly cause such fear. A sudden, unsteady stagger sounds as the Emperor turns his back on the girl, his movement stiff and uncomfortable. Alfaria worries that the Emperor is sick of her presence, unable to even stand the thought of a conversation. Bowing her head, the princess politely asks if she may accompany him home once the hunting season has concluded. The Emperor dismisses her coldly as he makes a sharp turn, stating his other knights will handle his protection. Alfaria feels a wave of discomfort as she realizes that the Emperor's open avoidance creates an incredibly awkward atmosphere. Watching the man walk away, the princess recalls his previous warnings with a mix of sadness and deep suspicion. Alfaria stands motionless in the fading light, her expression unreadable as the swirling white energy of Syria surrounds her. Inside a floral frame, a black-haired man looks down with a solemn expression as he calls for his father. The older emperor sits in his dark study, coldly ordering the man to enter while lamenting a deeply unfortunate situation. Narrative text reflects on the irony of heirs, noting that smart ones often lack the required thick dragon blood. A figure clad in a dark blue cloak stands before an ornate golden frame, their back turned to the viewer. The narration reveals a bitter truth. The most suitable and intelligent child is not even from the royal bloodline. The older emperor laments his lack of luck with his children as he summons the blue-haired Antorian into his study. Antarian smiles broadly, feeling deeply flattered by his father's words while wearing his patterned blue and white robes. A close-up of the emperor's lower face emphasizes his expectation that his clever son will immediately grasp his meaning. Alfaria appears in a stylized silhouette as the text confirms she has achieved the impossible by taming a wild dragon. Antarian looks away with a serious expression, reflecting on how such an achievement usually leads directly to the throne. The emperor expresses his deep unease that the most noteworthy child of the empire shares none of his blood. Antarian defends Alfaria's unwavering loyalty, though the emperor remains skeptical and asks how he can be so certain.
A panel of Alfaria accompanies Antarian's explanation that the princess feels she is undeserving of all she has received. The emperor listens in silence, his face partially obscured as he considers his son's defense of the blonde princess. Antarian continues his reasoning, questioning how anyone could doubt a girl who is so humble and grateful for her status. Against a sky backdrop, Antarian points out that none of his siblings could have tamed a wild dragon like her. Alfaria's silhouette appears as Antarian suggests keeping her close rather than getting rid of her, citing the empire's traditions. The gray-haired emperor looks down in quiet contemplation, seemingly moved by his son's insightful and strategic advice. Pleased with the report, the emperor offers Antarian a reward for his hard work during the winter hunt. Antarian politely declines, secretly hiding his true desire to become the second highest authority within the entire empire. Antarian requests a visit to Baroness Royce instead, prompting the emperor to realize he hasn't seen the prince's mother recently. A close-up of a blue eye hints at hidden motives as Antarian expresses confidence that the visit will please her. A respectful bow sounds as Antarian departs, privately worrying that his father fears a marriage between Alfaria and Yevan. Antarian reflects on his cleverness, noting that his earlier suggestion to the princess has successfully ended his father's concerns. The prince walks alone through the campsite under a star-filled sky as white magical fragments drift through the air. High above the tents, Alfaria arrives with the massive Yavuz, her arrival watched by the prince from the ground. Antarian and Alfaria look toward each other from across the camp, both overwhelmed by their own soaring, secret emotions. A close-up captures Antarian's intense and focused gaze as he watches the blonde princess under the fading twilight. Alfaria smiles warmly, her long blonde hair glowing as she reflects on the successful conclusion of the dangerous mission. The two royals stand together in the campsite as magical white energy swirls around them in a moment of peace. Alfaria announces her return to the capital now that the winter hunt and the distribution of sales have finished. A close-up of the blonde princess highlights her determination as she prepares to head back to her own residence. Alfaria arrives at her home, but she is surprised to find that she has brought along some unexpected company. The dark dragon looks on curiously while Alfaria reflects on the political fallout and the destruction of House Yevan. Looking over the rooftops, Alfaria realizes the dragon will be masterless for a while following the recent treason. A quick, agile leap sounds as the princess decides she must personally look after the rare dragon for now. A panicked shout sounds from the staff as they rush toward the entrance to greet their returning highness. The household servants welcome Alfaria home while she praises them for keeping the palace gardens so neat and tidy. The butler and maid blush with joy, deeply appreciative of the blonde princess's rare and kind words of encouragement. Alfaria studies her staff's exuberant reactions, wondering if they are more excited for her or the loot she brought. The princess stands before the grand facade of her residence, looking up at the rows of silent, arched windows. The older butler and maid discuss the princess, calling her a lucky charm despite her lack of formal education. The servants celebrate their comfortable lives, noting that the hunt brought in a massive haul of 2,500 gold coins. The maid greedily plans to steal from the hoard, blaming the presence of the white dragon for ruining their chances. A sharp tisk sounds as the maid mocks Alfaria's commoner background and her struggle to even write her name. Liz, the brown-haired maid, excitedly welcomes Alfaria back and asks if the princess enjoyed her recent time away. Alfaria and Liz chat about the maid's trip home, with Liz jokingly refusing to ever take another vacation again. Liz expresses her deep gratitude for her position, feeling fortunate to serve the princess despite her own low-status family. A close-up of Alfaria's blue eye shows her silent, focused observation as Liz professes her total devotion to her. A feather quill moves over parchment as Alfaria begins to write, preparing to test her maid's claims of loyalty. Alfaria directly asks Liz if she will remain devoted, and the maid swears she would never betray her master. Accepting the vow, Alfaria hands a folded note to Liz while watching the girl with a calm, knowing expression. Alfaria hands a sealed letter to Liz, ordering her to deliver it to Tapaza Manor immediately. Standing at the window, Alfaria watches a carriage depart, reminding Liz to bring back a personal response. Madame Aden, the older maid, notices Liz leaving and questions the princess about the sudden errand. Madame Aden suggests taking hunting leather to a tanner, but Alfaria dismisses the idea with a cold command. The hat maid reflects on the princess's sudden change in attitude, wondering why she is no longer obedient. Madame Aden persists, warning that raw leather will rot, while Alfaria interrupts her with a stern call. Alfaria turns with a sharp gaze, reminding the maid that she knows more about hunting than anyone. The head maid offers a fake apology for her interference, but Alfaria rejects her words with quiet intensity. Standing in the center of the grand hall, Alfaria demands an honest answer from the cowed head maid. Alfaria promises to give final instructions later as the maid's face tightens with a sudden, startled fear. The head maid rationalizes the princess's anger as professional pride while Alfaria studies a book in the hall. The scene shifts to the exterior, where a white carriage waits on the cobblestone path under a hazy light. A woman named Pauline Tapaza introduces herself, acknowledging the blonde princess's royal dragon blood with a smile. Alfaria mentions Lord Entusith's recommendation while asking Baron Rosen to explain the unexpected presence of the newcomers. Baron Rosen explains that while he expected Countess Tapaza, the arrival of church knights is entirely unexpected. A woman named Mano introduces herself as a representative of the Church of the Dragon God's judicial department. Mano explains she was sent by Mother Esterica to serve the princess, her expression remaining calm and respectful. Alfaria smiles and asks Mano to convey her gratitude to Mother Esterica upon her return to the church. With a determined glint in her blue eye, Alfaria prepares to address the next pressing matter at hand. Alfaria abruptly dismisses both Baron Rosen and Madame Adden from their high-ranking positions as chamberlain and head maid. The two servants cry out in shock, desperately trying to justify their service, while Alfaria stands unmoved. A sudden waver sounds as Alfaria reveals they will be detained for embezzlement and disrespecting the Imperial family. The princess commands her guards to search their rooms and bring all financial records to her study immediately. A clamor and murmur rise from the staff as they watch the household leaders fall from grace. Against a floral backdrop, Alfaria declares they will remain under investigation until her thorough inquiry is complete.